My parents sent me away after having my sister. They called me 12 years later to prove they're good parents after she failed. My parents gave up on me at 8 and sent me to live with my aunt. Before I turned 8, I knew they didn't like me. They basically had to deal with me. They had me in their early 20s, just starting their professions, and I watched them struggle to construct a life while raising me. Though I recently realized this, I think they resented me. I didn't understand why they hated me then. I spent my early years trying to please them, but nothing worked. My emotions were ignored. However, they behaved differently around friends and family. They couldn't let anyone know how horrible things were. They even convinced me to keep quiet out of fear of making them dislike me more. Years passed, and my mental and emotional health declined. I struggled in school and behaved out. I don't blame myself for my difficult childhood. My behavior would have changed if my parents had treated me better. They scolded, grounded, and punished me but failed. After my teachers complained about my behavior and grades, I misbehaved more to seek their attention. If being good fails, try being bad. This scheme failed. Mom got pregnant again around my 8th birthday. My parents were thrilled for the first time in years. I didn't understand the announcement at my birthday celebration. I learned weeks later. As my mom packed my luggage, my dad sat me down and told me I was going to live with my aunt. He said it was for my own good because I wasn't doing well there. Though young, I wasn't foolish. I knew they were dumping me. Replacement was coming with another baby. I had tantrums after being heartbroken. I wanted to stay with my family, friends, and parents, even if they mistreated me. They didn't care about my tantrums. They sent me to my aunt's house out of state. I felt miserable on the trip and begged my parents to let me stay. I committed to improve my grades and behavior, but they were set. I hadn't considered that this might not be about my grades or behavior back then. Even if I was the best kid, they might have hated me. My parents helped me settle in at my aunt's house for a few days, but I was still angry. However, my aunt helped me adjust. She may be the kindest and most loving person ever. My aunt, my dad's older sister and the oldest of 4 siblings, raised me because she had never married or had children. Although her siblings worked elsewhere, she worked on the farm their parents left them. She knew I was upset about moving in, so she reassured me that everything would be great and that I would enjoy the place once I got to know it. Her remarks helped me greatly. After 2 days, my parents left, and I broke down. My aunt was my only support. She constantly contacted my parents to talk to me to feel better, but they rarely responded. For 2 weeks I cried, and my aunt stayed with me. Eventually, I felt better. Living with her was so much better that I stopped missing my parents after a few months. I worked on the farm and went to school, and I was doing better. I had many friends, managed academics, and liked my teachers. My life improved once my parents sent me abroad. Even though we saw one another on vacations, I recognized I was better off without them. I was a troublesome youngster who needed a change of atmosphere, so my parents told my aunt I was moving in. After a few months, I told her my parents never wanted me, treated me horribly, and thanked her for taking me in. After that, my aunt treated my parents differently. She grew colder and distant. After that, we saw them at family parties and functions, but we haven't played much in 12 years. My happiness is greater without them, and they don't care. I have no relationship with my 12-year-old sister, which is probably best. Other family members say she's not growing up pleasant. She's one of the school's worst troublemakers at 12 and has a bad attitude. My parents have that issue, not me. My life is going fine. I'm in college to get a business degree so I can run the farm when my aunt retires. Since college is close, I can visit home every weekend, which is convenient. My parents called my aunt last weekend when I was at home because they couldn't reach me directly. First time in almost 12 years, we had a proper phone discussion. Their request was ludicrous, therefore it wasn't pleasant. I was curious when my aunt handed me the phone. After some little talk about my life, my parents said they were proud of my progress. They then said they wanted another go at parenthood. They asked me to stay in touch and move in after graduation. I was shocked since I couldn't fathom them requesting this. I questioned them why they suddenly wanted me back. Then they told me, my sister caused it. My sister is apparently even more of a difficult child than I was, which shames them. They wanted me to reconnect and show their friends and family they could raise wonderful kids. Reconnecting was about using me as proof that they were good parents, not about getting back together. I think people judge them. My sister is becoming a problem child like I was. They must demonstrate good parenting. It's absurd to want me back, yet they expected me to consider it. I told them on the phone that I wouldn't return and wouldn't assist them prove anything to their friends and family. I told them I was done with them, and they were too. I already described how poorly I did with my parents and how much better my life was after moving in with my aunt. I feel they were the problem, not troubled children. They didn't raise me, so saying they did would be a lie. My aunt handled the job well. I wouldn't let them acknowledge her efforts. Most of our relatives and acquaintances knew my aunt cared for me. Despite that, my parents planned to lie and say they had maintained in touch with me and visited often. I told them I wouldn't help spread this untruth and they were alone. They threw a tantrum, saying they had supported me and my aunt for 12 years. Instead, they delivered a monthly check that hardly covers anything. My aunt always paid the rest herself, but she never complained. Now they were trying to appear supportive with their limited efforts. They told me my sister had failed, which was humiliating, so I had to help them because they were my parents. I lost it then. I told them they were not my parents and no longer my family. I told them to leave me and my aunt alone because she was my only family. Update 1. Hello, everybody. When I first posted 2 days ago, most of you agreed I'm NTA. I appreciate that since it helped me understand. The only reason I doubted myself was that my parents had tried everything to convince me that what I said was bad in the preceding week. They made it sound like I was intentionally harsh. Honestly, I didn't believe I said anything wrong. Not rude or impolite. After reading the comments, I knew they were trying to pressure me into agreeing to their requirements and returning home to show off their successful parenting. Despite blocking them, they keep contacting me from various accounts and phone numbers, which is bothersome. My aunt told me to disregard it. She stated there was no need to apologize if I was right. She also asked several family members why my parents were suddenly so eager to prove they were decent parents. That's when she learned what happened. I heard she smoked at my sister's 12th birthday party 2 weeks ago. When my parents tried to confiscate her cigarette, she threw a huge rage that caused my mom to cry. My mom's older sister, grandparents, and other relatives told her at the party that their 12-year-old daughter had a cigarette because of their parenting failure. They said my parents could have prevented this by being more proactive. My parents have spoiled my sister since childhood, I've learned. They never refused her, gave her a substantial allowance, and allowed her to do everything she wanted unsupervised. She knew she could get away with anything, so my 12-year-old sister ruled them. After the cigarette incident, many friends and family criticized them for raising her improperly. Due to their desire to prove themselves good parents, my parents want me back. To demonstrate their success, they want to display me as a prize. Their behavior is pitiful. Most importantly, they should realize this strategy won't work because everyone knows my aunt reared me. Even my aunt's contacts disapproved of my parents' decision to send me away when I wasn't doing well. When your kids are struggling, you should help them, not ignore them. They had often advised my parents to bring me back after my sister's birth so we could grow up together. My parents ignored it, stating I was better with my aunt and they knew best. I don't understand how or if my parents can think of others. They could easily write off my sister while trying to gain me back by labeling her a failure. Her 12-year-old age terrifies me. I think counseling would be enough to get her back on track. I don't think my parents should guide me. This is the child they sent me away for, saying they wanted to save time, money, and energy for her. However, they have raised and treated her this way. They say they sacrificed their oldest kid for her, but I don't think they care about us. I don't think my parents were meant to be parents. I could easily resent my sister because she got everything I never did from our parents: love, care, affection, money, and time. Personally, I feel awful for her. All of that isn't enough to raise a child properly. I'm more surprised that my parents failed both of their children. I hope they quit calling and messaging me since I don't want to talk to them after what my aunt and other family members taught me. Next time they guilt trip me, I'll tell them. Update 2. I've remained silent for a few days, but if my folks tried to guilt me again, I'd tell them. They did. They called me from a new number 2 hours ago. I was told to apologize and return home as soon as I picked up. I was feeling sick today and moody. That phone call made matters worse, and I snapped. I shouted at them, saying I wouldn't apologize since what I said was true. They were not my parents. They had done nothing to deserve that label. I'd call my aunt my family because she raised me. I informed them they hadn't seen me in 12 years. Before that, they ignored me. They should blame themselves if they can't accept my not seeing them as family. They should stop phoning me to make me feel awful about something I don't have to do. They interrupted me, saying that while my aunt reared me, they supported us and we shouldn't forget that. I said the money they sent barely met my expenses. My aunt paid for practically everything herself, so my parents' money was useless. If they had kept me, they wouldn't have had to pay child support. They should quit acting like providing money was a tremendous favor to my aunt. I informed them child support was the very least after sending their son to her. She kept this from the family out of love, even though she could have ruined their reputation. They should stop talking about their spending because money isn't everything. The incident at my sister's birthday celebration should have taught them that. They also threw money to their youngest daughter, who is now a spoiled brat. They called her a failure, but my parents failed. They failed us both. They reacted defensively when I said it. They said my sister was happy and I didn't understand. They said her birthday party incident was one time. But I know happy kids, especially 12-year-olds, don't smoke because they can. Telling them they were probably attempting to convince themselves didn't mean I believed they were trying to raise my sister. They did the same mistakes with her as with me, but in reverse. They neglected me but spoiled her with money and too much attention. They didn't govern her correctly during their time with her. I knew this even though I'd never met the youngster. They needed to contact me to prove they were decent parents, showing how little they cared about their kids. They wanted to look like good parents, not be good parents. Perhaps this was too much truth for them. They yelled at me, cussed me, and said I had no idea what I was talking about. Their defensiveness and ranting validated my accuracy. We argued for a few more minutes until they said they were glad they sent me away years ago. They said they were glad they selected their daughter since I wasn't good enough to be their son. They hung up, perhaps fearing their goodbyes would hurt me. I didn't care. I was glad I won the dispute because otherwise they wouldn't have resorted to such low blows. Now, I hope they think twice before fighting or calling me again. Only my inability to aid my sister bothers me. I feel bad because she might survive outside my parents' terrible atmosphere. But sometimes you win and lose. Third update. A week has passed since I spoke to my folks. That last phone call was the last time they disturbed me, which is better for them. From what I know, they've been telling the family that my sister's cigarette event was one time and won't happen again. But nobody is duped. She may have more going on, this may have been her first cigarette, but who knows what else she's done. My parents were the only ones responsible. It was evident that their lack of monitoring and discipline caused this. I don't usually condemn someone without knowing them, but my parents deserve it. What kind of folks abandon one child while pregnant with another? Who? My parents. I'm delighted my family is now seeing how broken they are and keeping their distance. After years of silence, my aunt has begun to reveal why they left me with her. They didn't want me around because they wanted to spend more time with their other child, not because I was a troublesome kid. My parents made me a problematic kid, not me. If I were to blame, I wouldn't have thrived after moving away. My aunt hid this for 12 years because she didn't want to destroy my parents' reputation, but now she thinks they deserve it. Due to their defensiveness, my parents are already feared. Denial regarding parenting failure is evident. Everyone now knows my parents are the culprits after hearing our story, that they abandoned me to my aunt. They don't deserve my sister or myself. Some may believe we're overreacting and don't need to kick them while they're down. But this wouldn't have happened if they hadn't called me to help them pretend to be wonderful parents. They deserve it. Update 4 posting again after 2 weeks brings a huge update. Maternal grandparents are fighting for custody of my sister. My parents sent me to live with my aunt, but I've always maintained in touch with most of my family. I have a good relationship with my grandparents, so when they called a few days ago to ask about my parents, I told them. They were delighted I finally told them about my parents' mistreatment. They believed my parents had a solid cause to send me away for years. Now they know no cause could justify putting your child away. They apologized for not discovering the truth sooner, and I said it was okay. Everyone struggles, and I didn't seem to be hurting. It would have been hard to know without being told. After the cigarette incident with my sister, my grandparents heard allegations about my treatment from other family members. My aunt finally told me how my parents abandoned me after leaving me off at her house. My grandparents decided to investigate after hearing this. They didn't want their younger granddaughter to experience what I did. After talking to me, they discovered my parents hadn't changed. They still cared more about appearing good parents than being there for their kids. That's when my grandparents fought for custody of my sister to raise her differently. I agree with the choice. My life improved after I left my parents, and I'm sure hers will too. They've been given temporary custody, but my sister doesn't care. Her indifference makes me think she'll get over it. My grandparents believe they will obtain complete custody shortly, but they will allow my parents visits. My sister has started trying to get to know me, which is the finest part. Several days ago, we spoke on the phone. She appears glad to talk to me, and I heard that our parents told her not to talk to me for years because I was a bad influence. I hope we can create a good friendship now that she's coming around. Hopeful for the future. My sister stole my spotlight, trapped her boyfriend to have the first grandchild, and now expects me to raise her baby because she can't cope. In order to take my attention and have the first kid, my sister tricked her partner into getting pregnant. Now that she can't handle being a mother, she wants me to raise the child. After 6 years of dating, my longtime partner, Dexter, 29 million, and I, 28 million, were married last year. We met at a college function through common acquaintances. I was seeking a degree in business administration, and Dexter was studying engineering. Since the moment we clicked, we have been inseparable. To put things in perspective, I've always been competitive with my younger sister, Arya, 24F. She has attempted to do anything I did first or better since she was a young toddler. 3-year-old Arya hurled fits until our parents enrolled her in ballet courses when I was 7 years old. Even though she had never been interested in sports, she suddenly became interested in basketball when I joined the school team in the 8th grade. She insisted on taking lessons and putting in extra practice time when I started playing the piano at the age of 15 in order to surpass me at the yearly recital. Throughout high school and college, this trend persisted. Arya studied tirelessly till she received straight A's plus additional credit, while I received straight A's in my sophomore year. Arya put in endless effort to gain admission to an Ivy League university with a better scholarship after I got accepted to State University on a partial scholarship. Our parents supported her actions, viewing Arya as their ideal kid while frequently ignoring my accomplishments. While I had to work part-time jobs to help pay for my tuition, they spent thousands on her Ivy League education. After learning about my relationship with Dexter on social media, Arya began dating his younger brother Kenneth, 26 million, a few months later. Their connection appeared forced, and Kenneth was in his senior year of high school. But the fact that the girls were seeing brothers was cute in the eyes of our parents. Dexter and I developed a close bond throughout the years, helping one another through our early adult challenges, first jobs, and college. Our parents disapproved of our moving in together after graduation, calling it living in sin, yet they praised Arya's decision to live with Kenneth immediately after high school graduation as romantic. My grandparents were ecstatic when Dexter and I announced our engagement last year, anticipating the arrival of their first great-grandchild. In addition, my grandma gave me her antique cradle, saying she hoped to fill it soon. Arya was upset about this and couldn't bear that I was getting attention for once. She tried to overshadow us multiple times as we were organizing our wedding. Kenneth wasn't prepared, but she persuaded him to pop the question. We vehemently objected to her suggestion of a double wedding. She even attempted to attend our wedding wearing white, but our grandmother objected. Arya revealed her pregnancy at a family Sunday dinner 2 months after our wedding. During the news, Kenneth appeared startled and uneasy, nearly dropping his fork as she spoke. Arya purposefully became pregnant without telling Kenneth, as we later learned from mutual friends. In order to have the first grandchild in the family, she had stopped taking birth control without telling him. My parents were thrilled to have grandchildren. They focused all of their attention on Arya's pregnancy and totally forgot about our recent wedding. Every family get-together turned into a discussion about her nursery or baby shower ideas. While my father began establishing a college fund for the child, my mother spent hours shopping for baby clothes. After being given to me, my grandmother's antique cradle was abruptly moved to Arya's apartment since she needed it more. During a brother's night out, Kenneth told Dexter that he wasn't prepared to become a father. He wanted to concentrate on his recently launched IT profession first. He didn't know how to communicate his feelings of being confined and exploited without coming across like a villain. By claiming that their child required both parents, Arya persuaded him to stay. She even said that they needed to start living as a family and moved in with him at his parents' house. After the baby was born, the real issues began. Arya soon came to the conclusion that having a child was about more than just attracting attention and posting adorable pictures to social media. Even the most basic things, like changing diapers or getting up for night feeds, were difficult for her. Despite his best efforts, Kenneth was similarly unprepared. Both of them began to exhibit symptoms of overwhelm. Kenneth began staying late at work to avoid going home, and Arya would phone her mother at 3 a.m. to vent about how difficult things was. My folks invited Dexter and me to supper last week. We were mistaken to believe that it was simply a typical family supper. The fact that they had also invited Dexter's parents ought to have raised our first suspicion. My mother began discussing how anxious Arya was with the baby as soon as we sat down. She talked on how the kid was making things hard for her and how Arya needed time to figure out her life and job. She discussed how Arya needed a vacation and how her mental health was deteriorating. The unexpected thing came next. My parents said that since Dexter and I were stable, grown up, and had been married for a longer period of time, we need to adopt the child and raise it as our own. According to them, Arya could concentrate on her life and we wouldn't have to strive for our own child. I couldn't speak. Just because the real parents weren't prepared for the responsibilities they had consciously accepted, they were expecting us to look after someone else's child. We are currently under pressure from both of our families to change our minds. They constantly accuse us of being heartless for not assisting Arya when she is in need, but Dexter and I won't allow them to coerce us into accepting a duty that isn't ours. We never asked Arya to become pregnant, and we never asked her to utilize her pregnancy as a means of gaining attention. We're talking about a human being, not a car. Parenting proved to be more difficult than you anticipated, therefore you can't simply hand off your child. First update. Since my last post, things have become worse. My mother and Arya arrived at my place of employment yesterday during lunch. Somehow, the marketing company where I work in the city discovered my lunch routine. As I was making my way to my car to get lunch, they cornered me in the parking lot and made me listen to their suggestion. I could tell right away as they came up to me that this was no ordinary visit. Arya had black bags under her eyes and appeared to have not slept for days. She broke down in tears as she explained that she and Kenneth needed more time to work things out and that they weren't prepared for parenting. She insisted that parenthood was more difficult than she had anticipated and that she felt overwhelmed and confined. Then my mom told me about their new strategy. They proposed a 6-month trial period for Dexter and me to take the baby. They would come up with another plan if things didn't work out. They said this would ensure the infant was well cared for and give Arya and Kenneth time to organize their lives. In the parking lot, they even took a temporary custody agreement they had written out of their pocketbook. Arya went into a frenzy when I declined once again. She cried out that I was destroying her life and that I would help her if I truly loved her. She said that I was being bitter and self-centered by refusing to merely punish her. As she created the scenario, several of my coworkers, who were also on their lunch break, paused to gaze. My mom tried something different. She mentioned that I had always desired children and that perhaps this was God's will, that I should raise Arya's child rather than mine. This might be our chance to become parents, she remarked, adding that blessings might occasionally come in unexpected ways. Her statement made me furious for its arrogance. Prior to calling security, I instructed them both to depart. They arrived at our house with Kenneth's parents at approximately 7 p.m. that evening. It's clear that they organized this ambush in the hopes of applying pressure on us if they banded together. Fortunately, Dexter was at home. He adamantly urged them to go when they resumed their emotional manipulation. They said they wouldn't go unless we complied with their demands. As though he had nothing to do with the predicament, Kenneth's mother began to weep at how her son's life was being destroyed. My mother added that Arya needed help since she was experiencing postpartum depression. They utterly ignored the availability of real medical and psychiatric assistance, making it seem as though taking their child was the only way to assist her. Arya then revealed the shocking information. She had already purchased tickets to Europe with Kenneth. Regardless of our consent, they intended to leave the baby with us. She reasoned that we would be forced to care for the infant if they simply abandoned it. We had no choice but to step up because she had an entire plan in place. They would drop the kid off for babysitting and then head off for their trip. Her selfishness astounded me, and I told her right away that I would contact CPS if she left her child behind. I told them that it was illegal to abandon a child and that if they carried out their plan, I would not think twice about reporting them. They all felt shaken by this menace. My mother began pleading with us not to call the police, claiming that doing so would destroy Arya's life and future employment opportunities. Kenneth's parents came in, saying that if we agreed, they would raise Dexter's inheritance. They even offered to purchase us a new car and a larger house if we took the baby, but we refused. We threatened to call the police for trespassing if they didn't leave. They couldn't believe we wouldn't fall for their tricks, and their shocked expressions when they realized we were serious were almost humorous. Arya made one final attempt to guilt-trip me before she left. She reminded me of all the times I had expressed my desire to become a mother, how I had always cherished kids, and how this might be my only opportunity to become a mother. She also implied that I didn't truly want to be a mother because I had refused. I informed her that my desire to become a mother did not entail condoning her reckless actions. I told her that she was the one who made the decision to become pregnant without giving it much thought, and that she now had to face the repercussions of her choice. My mother cautioned us that we would come to regret our choice before they eventually went. She accused us of choosing to be unkind instead, saying that family should support family. In his will, Kenneth's father made it a point to reiterate that this would have an impact on our status. Dexter and I sat down and talked for a while after they departed. We came to the conclusion that we had to take action to guard against ambushes in the future. We're considering installing security cameras in our house, and I've alerted the security at work to any possible undesirable guests. The entire affair has demonstrated to us the extent to which our family would go in order to impose their desires on us. They obviously don't respect our personal space or our freedom to choose. If they persist in their harassment, we may pursue legal action. Second update. I made the decision to speak with my grandfather following the ambush at our house and the parking lot incident. He has always been our family's sane voice, and I needed his viewpoint. Since my grandmother's bridge club normally meets on Wednesday afternoons, I waited until I was certain he would be by himself. I brought his favorite lemon cake from the local bakery when I paid him a visit at their home. He was reading the newspaper in his study when I got there, as he normally did after lunch. When he first saw me, he grinned, but as soon as he saw how upset I was, his face immediately became serious. I took a seat in the worn leather chair across from him, the same chair I had sat in as a kid when I came to see him after school. I told him everything right away, including Arya's willful pregnancy, her incapacity to cope with motherhood, and our parents' absurd insistence that we accept her child. I described the ambush at work and how they threatened to leave the baby with us in an attempt to coerce us into accepting it. I could see his face shift from worry to rage as I talked. He already knew some of the narrative, but not the complete truth, which surprised me. He had heard an entirely different story from my parents. They claimed that Arya was upset when Dexter and I abruptly changed our minds about adopting the baby after first offering to do so. Arya was shown as the victim of our brutality, and we were portrayed as the bad guys who refused to assist families in need. When grandfather learned the truth, he became enraged. He found it incomprehensible that my mother, his own daughter, would attempt to make her elder daughter raise her younger daughter's child. Arya's intention to leave the kid with us and flee to Europe particularly infuriated him. He muttered that this wasn't how he and grandmother had brought up their kids as he continued to shake his head. Even though my grandmother was at her bridge club, he contacted her right away. This demonstrated how seriously he took the matter, as he rarely interferes with her social activities. He made me repeat everything to her when she got home 20 minutes later. Both of them were clearly distressed by the time I finished telling my story. This had gone too far, they both agreed. Grandfather claimed to have seen my parents continuously favor Arya throughout the years, but he had thought they would change their ways. He now understood that this mess was the result of parental partiality, which allowed Arya to act carelessly while expecting me to tidy up after her. Grandfather then made a surprising offer. Among his many holdings was a lovely property in a peaceful area approximately an hour's drive from our own residence. The current occupants had recently left the residence, which had been rented out for years. He said we needed to get away from this toxic circumstance and offered to give it to us. I tried to say no at first. It felt impossible to grasp that the house was worth at least $500,000. However, grandfather persisted. He claimed that he had intended to leave it to me in his will anyhow and that granting it to us now would enable us to get out of this predicament. My grandma concurred with him. Creating physical distance is sometimes the only way to deal with toxic family dynamics, she said. When we were ready, the house would allow us to establish our own family without any influence from either set of parents, she added. The very next day, they had the documents prepared by their lawyer. Although we wouldn't want to, the house was transferred to our names with the stipulation that we couldn't sell it for at least 5 years. According to our grandfather, this requirement was put in place to stop our parents from attempting to coerce us into selling it and handing Arya the proceeds. Dexter was in disbelief when I informed him about my grandparents' offer when I came home that night. Although he and my grandparents had always been friendly, this degree of assistance was surprising. We spoke about the offer and its implications for us all night long. Longer commutes to work would result from moving an hour away, but the calm and distance seemed worth it. We chose to accept the kind offer from my grandparents. Before we could move in, the house needed a few small repairs, but grandfather offered to pay for those as well. He declared his desire for us to start over, away from the manipulation and drama we had been enduring. Third update. We moved into the house my grandfather gave us 3 months ago. Our sanity has been greatly preserved by the distance. We changed our phone numbers as soon as we moved, limiting the new ones to my grandparents and a select group of reliable pals. In case someone tried to show up without permission, we also established a full security system with cameras. Our home has turned into a haven. The first month was devoted to repainting and personalizing it. I transformed a spare room into a library, something I've long desired, and Dexter turned another into his home office. We can plant and unwind in the spacious backyard, away from the chaos we left behind. Kenneth and Arya never visited Europe. They were forced to act as parents when they realized we were serious about calling CPS. Their common acquaintances have informed us that they are finally enrolling in parenting classes and looking for childcare assistance. When Kenneth's parents realized we wouldn't change our minds, they cease scaring us with the inheritance. Through our mutual connections, my mother continues to try to get in touch with us. She sends messages claiming that we are severing the family and that going away is childish. She even attempted to contact me using my work email account, but fortunately, my employer respects employee privacy. She wrote to me last week via one of my relatives, saying that we were being cruel by not assisting Arya and that she was depressed as a result of our behavior. Although he hasn't tried to get in touch with us directly, my father has been telling everyone he can that we left the family when they most needed us. Although he is attempting to portray us as the antagonists in this tale, most people who are aware of the real facts will appreciate why we had to keep our distance. Throughout it all, my grandparents have been our staunchest allies. They have made it plain to everyone that they support our choice and frequently pay us a visit in our new house. My mother was even instructed by grandmother to refrain from contacting us until she could respect our limits. They got into a heated argument over this, but my grandma refused to back down. In the end, Dexter's parents expressed regret for attempting to control us by threatening to take our inheritance. They acknowledged in a letter that their attempt to coerce us into taking Arya's baby was incorrect. We're still keeping our distance though. Months of coercion and pressure are not undone by a single apology. We've learned from the entire experience who genuinely cares about our welfare and who merely wants to utilize us to solve their problems. We've finally come to grips with our choice and are eager to begin a family of our own, on our own terms. We learned last week that Arya and Kenneth are finally going to parenting classes and couples counseling. We're happy that they're receiving assistance, but we don't intend to get in touch with them again anytime soon. It will take more than a few months of good behavior to restore the confidence that has been damaged. We're content with our quiet new life for the time being. In addition to joining a neighborhood community garden and making friends in our new neighborhood, we also intend to adopt a dog. Sometimes establishing enough distance to improve your personal happiness is the greatest approach to handle hurtful family relationships. We have no regrets about our choice, and that is precisely what we are doing. I evicted my sister-in-law after she left biohazards in my home, leading to family conflicts. Now my husband is stuck outside with her. My spouse has a sister and 2 brothers. I'm not really fond of his sister and her spouse. After losing their house, they have recently been couch surfing. This may have been prevented had they behaved sensibly. They initially remained with my in-laws, but they were asked to leave because of their unruly kids, citing my father-in-law's diabetes. After their elder children moved out, they then moved in with my husband's older brother and his wife, who had 2 extra rooms. However, they were forced to leave after 3 weeks due to planned renovations. They helped out around the house and generally kept things clean, so the older brother and his wife were pleased with them. The younger brother then moved in with them. The sister-in-law, SIL, assisted and managed her kids while they were there. Since her mother was coming to help with the baby, the youngest brother's wife, who was quite proud of her home and had just given birth, let them remain for a while. Finally, my husband agreed to take them in after being emotionally coerced. I only agreed if they kept the house tidy, especially because they had previously been untidy in my house. For instance, they would throw trash next to the trash can but not inside, frequently leaving behind dried and odorous food remnants. Even worse, instead of putting her old sanitary towels into the bathroom bin, SIL would frequently leave them on top of it. I asked the youngest brother's wife about their neatness before they moved in. According to her, everything was maintained tidy and orderly, so they had no complaints. But during family get-togethers over the holidays, I had personally witnessed how they behaved differently in other households than mine. I made my youngest brother and my parents-in-law witnesses to their pledge to help out around the house and to keep it as tidy as they found it in order to maintain accountability. They would have to depart right away if they disobeyed these regulations. SIL consented but retorted mockingly, "As you wish, Your Highness." It was all right for the first 5 days. Then, this morning, I discovered a used, incorrectly wrapped sanitary towel on top of the trash can. Her daughter, who was staying in my daughter's room, placed a used tampon on the sink and smashed the shampoo and conditioner in the bathroom. Additionally, because SIL's husband had left for work early, the kitchen was in disarray. I couldn't risk my inquisitive toddler picking up a bloody sanitary towel. I knocked on the door of the guest room and instructed her to gather her belongings and go. With an indignant expression, she asserted her innocence and said, I could throw it away if it bothered me, it was just some blood. The final straw was that. After grabbing her luggage, I began packing her things. She refused to leave the house at first, claiming that she didn't follow my instructions and that she was going to wait for her brother. I informed her that I also own this house. A few hours ago, I dropped her off at my in-laws with her youngest children. Her husband made a scene when I wouldn't let him in after he returned from work. He visited my in-laws, but because of Phil's sickness, they don't want them there. Within 20 minutes after my husband got home from work, my in-laws and her family were in our driveway. They are still arguing about being allowed inside while standing outside. I warned my husband that he was not welcome in our house either if he backed down, and I wouldn't open the door. Second paragraph. First update. A little update. My driveway appeared to be the scene of a Mexican standoff yesterday. I declined to walk out and participate in the conversation while they were out there. 2 whole hours later, they were gone. They are at my in-laws right now, but they said they would come back tomorrow when everyone would be home from work to talk about the situation and come up with a practical answer. That's what my hubby told me, anyway. I informed my husband that I would not have them in my home as soon as he entered. Additionally, he cleaned up after them when I instructed him to. He asked me why I made him do it after he had cleaned up. I informed him that, in contrast to him, I was not biologically linked to other people and that I was equally repulsed by their bodily fluids. I went on to say that he could only imagine how awful I used to feel when I had to clean up after them if he thought it was dirty. He bleached the sink 3 times and said he would buy a new bin. We have a plan for tomorrow that states they will never move in with us. He left the task of cleaning up the shampoo and conditioner mess in the bathroom to his niece. Our daughter is welcome to use our shower in the meanwhile. Tomorrow, we'll see how this plays out. Third paragraph. Second update. It was a long day with my in-laws yesterday. We left early in order to finish it. A guilt trip was the first thing my in-laws did. They first said they would house them until they found a place, but it wouldn't be good for Phil's health because of his diabetes. In order for them to stay with them because they have extra bedrooms, I advised them to advise their daughter to discipline her kids so they wouldn't run around like monkeys. Sil wasn't pleased about that. She launched into a diatribe, accusing me of trying to sour relations between her and her brother and claiming that I had always envied her. I told her that since she didn't like her own life, it was unrealistic for me to be envious of hers. Since my husband never gets involved in my family's affairs, she wondered whether he would mind if I told him what to do with his family. She instructed him to establish the rule and let me know that his sister and her family would remain for however long it took them to relocate. That was unacceptable to my hubby. He informed her that it was a 2 yes, 1 no situation and that the house belonged to me equally to his. Even though I was now a stay-at-home wife, I still made contributions to the house's purchase when I was employed. His MIL was staying because of the baby, so the younger brother and his wife indicated they wouldn't be able to host them. Renovations were mentioned by the older ones. The wives of the older and younger brothers claimed that I was making this up, saying that she always kept their home and her own tidy. I was advised to accept it and behave like family. Since I saw what I saw and her brother witnessed it and had to clean it up, I informed them I wasn't there to debate about her cleanliness. He attested to the fact that he did and that I wasn't lying. After making a mistake, my sister-in-law asked her brother, "Why did you clean it up?" "Because I was supposed to clean it up," she said. Either she knows she has the entire family in her pocket, or she is the most stupid person alive to acknowledge that. In any event, I made it plain that she would not be staying with me and that, because she got along much better with the other members of the family, they would find a solution on their own. My niece refused to clean up the leftover mess when my husband told her that she was old enough to do so. "She's your niece but my daughter, don't you dare tell her what to do," her father chimed in, causing a heated argument that they both had to end. I explained to her and her husband that my husband and I were simply there to collect money for the trash can we had to discard because she was scattering biohazards all over the house. "It would never happen," she replied, laughing in my face. "All right," I said. It happened so fast that day that I still had her daughter's, her husband's, and her 2 younger children's tablets, along with some of her jewelry and a few other items. "I hope you understand that when I threw you out, I didn't pack all your possessions." I assured her that everything would be sold to cover my expenses. She was shouting loudly about what she would do to me if I dared to sell anything as we were leaving. Having my back, my hubby advised me to sell anything I needed to. They continued to text my husband later, pleading with him to do them a favor by putting up with her for a few months until she recovered. I informed him that I would never consent to allowing her, her slobby husband, and her swarm of kids to return. They also tried to guilt me about his niece's education by texting me, saying that if they find a rental outside of the school zone, she could have to start at another school because they don't have a place to remain near her school. "Tough luck," I responded back, then blocked them. Although my husband won't block his parents, he was upset with his brothers for accusing him of being self-centered for not taking them in when they were going through a difficult time. Although they acknowledged that it was disgusting, they justified her actions by speculating that I might have done something to make it worse. Finally, the The wife of the oldest brother sent a voicemail to my husband's WhatsApp using her husband's phone. She said, "I'm not kidding. You're still fine to watch her 6-year-old on Tuesdays and Wednesdays as usual, aren't you?" I instructed him to determine the response to that inquiry. A new family was moving into the area, so I had to stay a little while longer after I went to pick up my kids. We held a brief meet and greet since the parents wanted to get to know the parents of their kids' classmates. Since I often pick up my husband's older brother's 6-year-old daughter on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, the office brought her to me. Since no one had been to pick her up, her instructor, assuming I was late because of the meeting with the new parents, instructed an office administrator to bring her to me when she saw me waiting in the hallway. I informed them that on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I was no longer in charge of her. They must have contacted her mother when they brought her back to the office. My husband informed me when I got home from the meet and greet that his parents had called and expressed their disapproval of me leaving their grandchild. Additionally, they placed his older brother's wife on the phone, and she and my husband got into a heated argument. He spoke with the SIL I expelled as well. In the end, my husband informed his parents that they would not be allowed to speak to him for a week, and that he would only unblock them if they sincerely apologized to him and to me. After I made it apparent that I would no longer offer free services, he clarified that it was the parents' responsibility to arrange for pickup. For the time being, the SIL who I expelled is still living with her parents. My in-laws are hosting her spouse, 2 of her elder children, and her younger 2. The 2 younger ones and the other 2 older ones are dispersed throughout the other 2 homes. They did, however, imply that it would be a short-term arrangement because she had assured them that she would soon convince her brother to change his ways. I believe I have a long journey ahead of me. The wife of the oldest brother was present when I dropped off my kids at school on Friday. She trailed after me. She confronted me in the store parking lot when I paused to pick up some products. I refused to accept her sincere apologies and desire to make things right. She was desperate, claiming that since she is the lead and must oversee, she would lose the project if she missed one more week of overtime. She had to pick up her 6-year-old since her husband was unable to adjust his schedule. She argued that resenting her 6-year-old over a casual remark was not justified. Her child blamed me for the biohazards left in my house, so I told her that wasn't a casual remark. She stated that she hoped to diffuse the tension and that all she wanted was for everyone to get along. I suggested that she ask the SIL for assistance, but she said that the SIL had declined since she was barely able to manage her 3 children under the age of 7. In order to free up time and energy to pick up the kids, I advised her to ask the youngest wife, who has her mother residing with her. She claimed that rather than assisting with her 6-year-old, the youngest wife preferred to focus on the early recollections of her own child. I advised her to accept it and work with the people she regarded as family to find a solution. I then proceeded with my shopping. She was there once again when I went to pick up my child in the afternoon. She accompanied me home once we exited the pickup line. I parallel parked my driveway to keep her from parking there and bothering me at my door. In order to transfer the car, I texted my husband to ask him to let me know when he would be home. She parked on the side road and came to my house despite being unable to find a spot. I refused to open the door when she rang the ring. She went around the back and knocked on my back door, telling me that since we were family, I couldn't avoid her forever. Through the glass, I threatened to contact the police for harassment if she didn't leave. Then she went off. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were there when I went to answer our doorbell in the evening. I let them in because they wanted to apologize and come inside. The first thing they told us was how much the past 3 days had changed them. They then apologized and requested me to return to my regular self. According to my mother-in-law, because life is full of ups and downs, you may have to tolerate negativity from family members at times. It can't be all sunshine and roses all the time. They tried to guilt-trip me into helping out with the 6-year-old by pointing out that her mother and I had previously been on good terms, so my husband stopped his mother and said, "Then why do we, critical, back, Slore, Lemon, and I, have to be the only ones on the receiving end of the negativity? When will you hold my sister and the others accountable for their behavior?" When she choose her side, I added, she forfeited that privilege. Given that she might lose her work, they wondered if I would be able to sleep at night. When my husband mentioned how much I had done for her without receiving payment, I said, yes. They retorted that it shouldn't matter if I had another child, who was already potty trained, because I was already at home. Since I had given up a lot for their kid over the years, I assured them that it did make a difference. I added that they had no right to force me to assist if they couldn't persuade the younger brother's wife to do so. When I would return the items I was holding hostage was what they wanted to know. My spouse interrupted, claiming that he was the one holding them captive and that they would be given back after his sister covered the costs. According to my FIL, SIL would be justified in informing the police about the theft. In response, my spouse said, "She can do as she pleases." My spouse then disclosed something that I was unaware of. He instructed them to inform his sister that he had canceled the hotel and all of the summer holiday plans, including his niece's horseback riding. He clarified that he didn't feel compelled to cover SIL's expenses if her father may ask him, "Who do you think you are to boss my daughter around?" My spouse made the decision to stop funding because their father was uncertain about the uncle-niece relationship and his authority to teach her responsibility. This disturbed my mother-in-law. He acknowledged that he had canceled it when she remarked, "You haven't done that, have you? I thought we would all have a great vacation." I refused to accept their attempts at justification, saying that SIL had a lot on her plate with the house loss and young children. I informed them that she had made bad decisions that led to her current predicament and that having a ninth kid would not make things better. According to my MIL, her body, her choices, means that every woman should make her own decisions regarding family planning, and I shouldn't tell SIL what she should or shouldn't do. She argued it was different, claiming she wasn't telling me to have more or fewer children since she liked grandchildren, the more, the better. I responded, "Like you're dictating to me right now, by weaseling your way into our home under the guise of an apology?" I said to her, "You can't expect me to look after other people's children either. The less stress I have, the merrier I am. That also falls under my body, my choice." We had decided to be less friendly over a little issue, so they turned to my husband and asked whether he was truly putting them through all of this. He replied, "Scrubbing down the 2 bathrooms after my niece and sister wasn't exactly the highlight of my life." We kindly requested them to leave since they were unable to stop apologizing and complaining about us not going with them for the family holiday and about canceling SIL's and her family's vacation, which they said destroyed the atmosphere for everyone. The doorbell kept ringing and there was frantic hammering on our door on Saturday early, waking us up. SIL and her oldest son were there. My spouse assured me that he would take care of it. She attempted to push through as he opened the door, but my husband stopped her. She was yelling and claiming to be able to knock some sense into me by coming inside. To put things in perspective, I am a year and a few months older than her, and she is little over 2 years older than my husband. She shoved $300 in his face and asked, "Is she happy now, that cradle-snatching expletive?" She continued to abuse me, calling me a jealous expletive and saying that I had ruined their family by controlling him. She went on to say that she expected him to promptly reschedule the vacation and activities now that she had given the money back. My spouse said that even if hell froze over, it wouldn't occur. While he went to get something, he instructed her to wait outside. He entered, put their things in a bag, and left out one of the tablets he had purchased and was still paying for with insurance. He gave her the bag after opening the door. She started swearing and urged him to mature. She threatened to file a report against him for causing damage to her possessions. He calmly retorted that everything was captured on camera and cautioned her against taking legal action because her children could hardly afford a lawyer, much less a place to live. He warned her not to set foot on our land ever again before slamming the door in her face. Without any further drama, she departed. My mother-in-law and father-in-law later called us and tried to talk sense into our heads. I had agreed with my husband to allow them to see our kids as long as they met certain requirements. Even though I'm not a lawyer, I informed them that their rights were restricted in our state when they claimed to have grandparent rights. They had to respect me and my family if they wanted to have a relationship with their grandchildren. We don't currently communicate with the other brothers, their spouses, SIL, or her immediate relatives. To convey a message, we momentarily unblock them before blocking them once more. We don't mind at all if the older brother's kids wish to get in touch with us or visit. The 6-year-old can only come here on weekends when we have time to host them, and only if her elder siblings are present to watch over her. There won't be any more surprise visits. We will also block their parents if they call us using those numbers. The wife of the older brother called me while I was messaging and offered to pay me $7.50 per hour for the days I watched her 6-year-old. She texted me to sweeten the bargain, offering to pay me for the previous 3 months, but I said, "No, thank you, I'll pass on that wonderful opportunity." Still, I declined. My mom kicked me out for her new family, then demanded college money for my siblings when she found out I'm successful. To put things in perspective, my mother gave birth to me at the age of 20, and my biological father was never involved. He never wanted children, she told me, and because they had only been dating for a few months when she became pregnant, she offered him the option to leave, which he did. She stated that because of the bitterness of their breakup, she had chosen not to demand child support from him and he had also refused to pay. Never talking again was convenient for both of them. She was fortunate to have my grandparents' unwavering support and encouragement, which enabled her to finish her schooling and secure employment. She dated a couple men while I was younger, and she began dating Harry, a co-worker, when I was about 8 years old. Before getting married, they dated for over 3 years. Although we weren't very close, Harry and I got along well enough to put up with each other being in the house. When my mom became pregnant 4 years after they were married, everyone was overjoyed, including me. In retrospect, I probably should have known what was going to happen, but I was too preoccupied with the idea that my mother would always support me. I hoped Mom wouldn't leave me now because she had endured a lot of challenges raising me by herself. She obviously distanced herself from me after she married Harry, and we began to drift apart, but I thought it was only a phase and that things would improve. During her pregnancy, I did my best to be encouraging, but she appeared to get angrier every time I was there. To avoid disturbing her, I made the decision to become scarce, but it seems that I wasn't inconspicuous enough. She and Harry sat me down for a serious conversation 6 months after she gave birth to twins. They informed me that they couldn't keep me in the house since they had 2 children to look after. They couldn't legally throw me out without getting in trouble because I was still a juvenile, having just turned 16. By highlighting the financial burden of providing for a big family, on their meager income, they attempted to persuade me otherwise. Since we had been living comfortably up until that point, I honestly didn't think it was hard to maintain 2 adults, 1 teenager and 2 kids on the salary of 2 web engineers. They clearly only wanted me gone. I genuinely didn't want to leave, so even at that point I attempted to offer ways to stop it. If money was a problem, I offered to acquire a job, but my mother said she wanted to save money and resources for the children who deserved it more. She stated that they deserved to stay with them more than I did, not that they needed this more. That was all it took for me to decide that I had to leave because it was obvious that no one wanted me. They knew I had enough dignity to know I was unwanted, so they had only nudged me in the right way after I left, without even telling me where I should go. Their strategy was successful. Since they hadn't really evicted me, it wasn't technically an eviction, but I would still consider it to be the same. I felt like I had no other choice after they had forced me into a difficult situation. I went straight to my grandparents' house when I left that day. They wanted to be there for the twins, so even though they were upset about what my mother had done, they didn't cut her off. At 16, I obtained part-time work because I could no longer financially rely on my grandparents due to their advanced age. When my mom and Harry went to visit my grandparents with the kids, I would see them every now and then, but they seldom ever inquired about me. They tended to be very formal, as if they didn't miss me at all, even when they did see me. They actually appeared to be happy without my presence. I was saddened by my mother's apparent decrease in irritability, but I knew there was nothing I could do about it. Until it was time to go to college, I lived with my grandparents. My mom wasn't involved with me even then, so I had to rely on friends to assist me get settled in my dorm because my grandparents weren't old enough or healthy enough. My mom and Harry declined, preferring to preserve money for the twins' future, so I had to take out a student loan, and one of my relatives co-signed for it. Fortunately, one of my uncles agreed to assist if I assured him that he would never be responsible for any of the costs. I worked while I was in college to make sure I wouldn't fall behind on my payments and to give myself a financial advantage. My mother and I hardly spoke once I started college, and only my grandparents were present when I graduated. Not even my mother bothered to congratulate me. In order to avoid being a burden to my elderly grandparents, I began working and lived independently after college. Although I didn't make much money during the first few years, I was still able to pay for groceries, utilities, rent, and even started to pay off my debt while setting money up for the future. In fact, I would describe that as living on a limited income. Fortunately, things finally got better. It took a while, but I eventually rose through the ranks of my organization. Considering that I received very little assistance, I'm proud of how far I've gone and am now in a rather comfortable posture. Unexpectedly, my mother discovered that I earn a good living, even though we haven't spoken for many years. At nearly 33, I currently hold a senior management role at the same organization where I began my career. About 4 months ago, I got a big promotion, but I wanted to keep it a secret, so only a select few individuals knew about it. To thank my uncle for co-signing my loan back when I was having trouble paying for college, I did inform him. According to what I understand, he just met my mom and Harry at a family get-together and urged her to get in touch with me to congratulate me on my success. Even though I'm sure he meant well, it didn't work out because she didn't even get in touch with me to offer me congratulations. In the end, my mother learned about it and recently visited my home with Harry, insisting on talking to me. I should note that I haven't spoken to her since I started college. I blocked her everywhere and left her out of my life after graduating since I didn't think there was any use in hoping she would change her mind. She didn't appear to be negatively impacted, and to be honest, I doubt she even noticed. Only my grandparents, who were aware that I disliked discussing my mother, were in contact with me and they steered clear of the subject. I didn't really stay in touch with my uncle either, so I was unaware that my mom and Harry had been having financial difficulties for a few years. Only when they arrived at my door and told me how bad things had gotten did I find out. It was wishful thinking, but the only reason I even allowed them inside was because I hoped they would be coming to make amends. They began by stating that they had heard from my uncle about my promotion and how I was one of the youngest individuals in such a prominent position in my firm, rather than congratulating me on my accomplishment. It seems that they were surprised that I had kept it from them. Ironically, I was taken aback that they expected me to communicate with them at all, much less deliver any positive news. Additionally, they were disappointed that I had shut them out of my life, claiming that it was only because they had prioritized their children above me. They maintained that I should have been old enough to comprehend their rearranged priorities and not harbor resentment as a teenager. They said that I should have supported their decisions rather than going in with my grandparents. I'm not even sure why they thought I would agree with their choice to expel me from the house. They tried to gaslight me into thinking that I was the bad guy for being angry that they had ejected me so they could spend time with their children alone, but that's how they began our reunion after all these years. They talked about how tough the past several years had been for them without even giving me a chance to explain my side of the story. They described how they had launched their own company but, regrettably, it did not succeed, resulting in losses. They were now attempting to make up for previous losses, and they desperately needed money as the twins were getting close to college age. I saw then why they had come. They needed financial assistance. They didn't waste any time going right to the point, even trying to soften it by claiming that I could make it up to them by paying for my siblings' schooling, but that at first they were upset that I hadn't contacted them despite performing well. Their attempt to make it seem as though they were doing me a favor by allowing me to pay for the college education of 2 children I no longer knew astounded me. I told them right away that I wouldn't be doing that and that it was disrespectful of them to believe they could coerce me into doing so. I became irate and reminded them that they were the reason I had to work during my college years and pay for my own education. Because they wanted to save for their real children, who they believed deserved it more than I did, they had refused to provide me with financial support back then. I assured them that they had no right to expect anything from me now, particularly financial support, since I had never questioned their choice to put the twins first and had just left them alone. They actually no longer had the right to demand that I communicate with them. Instead of attempting to emotionally control me, I pointed out that they could now use the same money to pay for the twins' college bills because they had wished to conserve money and resources for the children who deserved it. I had nothing else to say, so I asked them to go. I was stupid to invite them inside my house in the first place, assuming they might have come to express regret for their treatment of me. They became irritated and attempted to place the blame elsewhere when I began to insist that they leave. They informed me that I wasn't innocent in this case. Their protection. They said I was overenthusiastic, over-involved, and frequently irritable while we all lived together. I was only a teenager, trying to keep in touch with my family as they drifted away from me, so I couldn't believe that was a true issue they had with me. They then had the audacity to claim that I was no better than them since I had denied their request. They said I was forgetting all the years my mother had taken care of me and brought me up alone. They said that this was my opportunity to make it up to her, and assist her, but I was being rude and unappreciative instead. Since I was a child at the time, I thought it was absurd that they would bring that up. Even if I had wanted to, I couldn't have decided not to rely on them. Furthermore, it wasn't like they were helping me. They pushed me out of the house and effectively forced me out as soon as they believed I was mature enough to manage things on my own. For the following 18 years, they refused to acknowledge my existence. I was still shocked that they had the gall to expect me to aid them now, as if I owed them something, even after everything that had happened. During the dispute, things became quite personal and ugly, and I finally threatened to call the police if they didn't leave my property. My mother reminded me of all the sacrifices she had made when I was younger, ostensibly because she wanted to be a good mother, before they finally departed after more arguments. She said that I had been ungrateful the one time she had expected me to sympathize with her predicament and allow her to put other people before myself. She now claimed that rather than the other way around, I was portraying her as the villain. Since then, this has been bothering me and I'm having trouble figuring out whether I'm to blame, whether I've been expecting too much from my mother, or whether she's simply deceiving me. I decided to post on Reddit to get some unbiased perspectives even though I'm quite sure I'm correct. AITA for not paying for my half-sibling's college tuition just because my stepdad and estranged mother are having financial difficulties. Edit. Even though my uncle had excellent intentions, I reminded him that what he did was wrong and unacceptable. His actions undoubtedly had a negative effect. I wouldn't be in this predicament if he hadn't shared my life with my mother and disclosed my contact details without my consent. He apologized excessively, stating that he was unaware of their financial difficulties and that he had no idea my mother would respond in this manner. He admitted that he had no business telling my mother about my life and that if we had wanted to get back together, we would have done so without his help. Since his heart was in the right place, I don't intend to cut him out of my life. I would have been much more angry if he had meant something different. He simply made an error. In addition, it was because of him that I was initially able to attend college. He was the only person who was prepared to assume the responsibility of co-signing my loan application. If you consider it, I might not be in this situation at all if it weren't for him. I made sure to let him know that what he did wasn't appropriate since I don't want to come across as unappreciative, but I'm also not a doormat. Whatever I did was fair enough, and I believe I found the ideal balance. We're doing great together. And I won't hold anything against him because I needed this resolution somehow. I also discussed my mom's recent struggles with my grandparents. They believe I'm correct and have promised to make an effort to persuade her to change her mind. I realized that they didn't want to lose touch with their other grandchildren, which is why they have remained in touch with my mom. They understand the struggles my mom's family is going through, but they don't think it's right or fair to put me through this. That's their position on the issue and I believe it's reasonable enough. ***. First update. My mother has taken it upon herself to remind me of all she did for me growing up ever since we last spoke, which was nearly 9 days ago. She probably sends me an email every other day to make me feel like I owe her something. It's not like she gave me a favor by raising me alone, and she was legally required to take care of me, so I don't really understand the point. She only reared me when it was convenient for her. She and her spouse decided to expel me as soon as I started to cause them trouble, citing the need to save money for the twins and their future. Now that we're in the future and the twins are adults, I believe they should rely on themselves rather than wasting time trying to manipulate and guilt-trip me. Although I had been ignoring her emails, I made the decision to reply a few days ago. I explained to her all I had written in my essay. She didn't take it well, as expected, and labeled me ungrateful once more. I just informed her that calling me names would not alter the truth and that I no longer wanted to have any contact with her because she had been a bad mother. I blocked her email account after that, but she made a new one to continue to annoy me. Since she never done the same for me, I blocked that one as well, and I'll keep doing so until she understands that I'm not here to mope about her. To be honest, I'm glad we're finally having this discussion because I think it will end quickly and I'll have the necessary closure. Only because I was still clinging to the hope that perhaps they had changed, that perhaps they were here to congratulate me and make amends, did I welcome them into my house and talk to them that day. However, speaking with them made me realize that they are just not the type of individuals who are able to experience regret, guilt or shame. I've fully given up on ever making amends with them after it once again made me realize how self-centered and cunning they are. Second update. I believe that my mother's appearance at my place of employment earlier today was the most bizarre thing she has ever done. Fortunately, I wasn't working today, so she departed really fast and didn't succeed in her endeavor. I was feeling a little under the weather, so I decided to take the day off, and I'm so happy I did. She would have definitely thrown a fit or done anything to make me look foolish if I'd been present. When the receptionist called to inform me that my mom had arrived, wanting to see me and refusing to go despite being informed that I wasn't there, I learned the truth. When they put her on the phone with me, I firmly told her that I was at home, even though I was already rather anxious about what she might do. She was informed that if she attempted anything at my place of employment, I would sue her until she would be too ashamed to send her children to college. I did my best to sound threatening, so I believe it truly frightened her. She agreed to depart right away, provided I met her in person, so it must have worked. I reminded her that she couldn't afford a lawsuit at the moment and informed her that she wasn't in a position to be making demands. I also mentioned that my employer would not think twice about suing her if the situation worsened, which would be a very different scenario because they wouldn't be as forgiving as I'd been. She'd be better off just going out in silence. I didn't get any more calls or notifications regarding the event, so I guess she left after giving the phone back to the receptionist. I can't afford for this to happen again because that was undoubtedly a near call. I've made the decision to speak with a lawyer to find out what precautions I may take. She hasn't threatened me directly, so I'm not sure if this is enough to get a restraining order, but I still want to speak with the attorney to discuss my alternatives. I just have to hope that this experience was unpleasant enough for her to think about leaving me alone till then. Update 3. Since I'm very certain we now have grounds for a restraining order, I suppose I don't need to consider filing one. When my mother arrived at my place of employment last week, I was able to persuade her to leave. However, in light of this week's events, I believe that a restraining order against her needs to be issued for everyone. She was waiting outside my door when I got home from work a few days ago. I informed her right away that I didn't want to argue and that I would call the police if she didn't leave. She practically raced at me and threw me to the ground, sending my phone flying out of my hands as I was ready to dial. She cursed at me and blamed me for everything that had gone wrong in her life, while she attempted to beat me up. It took me a while to react since I was so taken aback by her insane conduct. However, because I consistently work out and am much younger than her, it was simple for me to overwhelm her when I did. Fortunately, all the shouting had alerted my neighbors to the problem and caused them to call the police. They even came to my aid and restrained my mother as we awaited the arrival of the cops. I made the decision to file charges when the police eventually arrived. She is currently in a lot of trouble. In addition, I've discussed this with my attorney and requested a restraining order against her. I've been informed that Harry has taken the children and moved in with his parents. I'm not sure if he intends to come back anytime soon. He apparently challenged her about her behavior after saving her and informed her that she couldn't continue acting in this manner. She also got into a fight with him, which seems to mean she's really lost it. I believe she finds it difficult to believe that I'm doing well in life, but in all honesty, she is to blame for her own issues. I will not be sorry for her. I'll have the restraining order in place soon, and since I'm making more money, I've already started thinking about moving into a larger home. Since now seems like the ideal moment, I'm going to start exploring my alternatives. Being linked to someone like that is embarrassing, so I sincerely hope my mother receives the support she needs and learns to behave normally. She has also been nasty to my grandparents, who have told me they no longer want to be around her. The only person she can blame for everyone avoiding her is herself. Anyway, I'm not worried about it anymore. Husband plans dinner date with long-term ex and dismisses my concerns as insecurity. Am I the asshole for overreacting? Throwaway account. I really need input from people who don't know us, so their opinions aren't biased. I'm very emotional and tired, so I apologize in advance for any typos. My husband, Jack, M, 36, used to date Emma, F, 34, for years. They broke up because Jack didn't want to get married or have kids. Emma moved away, and about a month later, Jack met me, F, 30. I don't look like the typical girls Jack had been dating. For example, Emma is super tall, blonde with blue eyes, and has a PhD. I'm petite, 110 pounds and short. I'm a nurse, I have dark curly hair and I'm an introvert. Apparently, she was a social butterfly. Jack has a group of friends that he's known since childhood. They are like brothers to him, but from the very beginning, they didn't like me. They still call me the rebound girl. At our wedding, during his best man speech, he joked, "We all thought rebound girls were temporary, but our brother Jack made an honest woman out of her." Everyone laughed. I didn't. They also joke that I'm just a nurse, and that Jack downgraded, since he has a PhD, technically postdoctoral, from a doctor to just a nurse. For my own sanity, I ignore them, and Jack still hangs out with them regularly. Last weekend, there was a fundraising gala, and Emma was there. I saw her for the first time in person. Jack introduced me, and Emma said, "Yeah, I know who she is." The guys weren't kidding when they described her, haha. Jack quickly changed the topic and asked how long she was in town. She said for a week, and then they ended up chatting all night, reminiscing about old times. I decided to talk to other people. Later, at bedtime, Jack mentioned that he should go out to dinner with Emma. I assumed he meant inviting her over, so I asked what kind of food she likes so I could make it. He said no, it would just be the two of them. I asked, like a date? And he replied, "No, just two friends going to dinner." "Why are you so insecure?" I asked him. "Do you miss her? Do you miss being with her?" He said, "I'm not going to lie, it felt great talking to her tonight. There's just something about her." I got really upset and told him he can do whatever he wants, but if he goes on this dinner date, I'm done. He thinks I'm overreacting and being insecure. So, wise people of Reddit, is this rebound girl overreacting? Original post. It's 4:45 a.m. and I didn't sleep last night. I thought I'd post an update. I decided to stay awake and talk to him when he came home. When he did, I told him, "I could have tracked your location, shown up at the restaurant, and done so many things to get my answer. But I'd like to believe you have enough respect for me to tell me. Were you on a dinner date with your friends or Emma?" He showed me pictures and said, "No, it was all of us, me, my friends and Emma." I was stupid enough to feel relieved, even feeling bad for accusing him. Then he told me to sit down because we needed to talk. He said that after seeing Emma at the gala, he couldn't stop thinking about her. He decided to take Monday and Tuesday, yesterday, off and spent the whole day with her, while I assumed he was at work. He went on about how strong their connection was, how they couldn't stop talking, and how much he enjoyed being with her. He told me I'm a sweet woman, but he never felt that spark with me. He said that at dinner, Emma was laughing and having fun with everyone and it felt like old times, compared to me being quiet and uncomfortable around his friends. He said it's best if we go our separate ways. I asked him if they had sex and he didn't reply. I asked again and again, but he still wouldn't answer. I was so upset and asked, "Why did you marry me if you're not over her?" He said he thought I was the one, but these past 2 days made him realize there's no spark between us. He kept going on about how sweet I am and that I'll find someone too. I told him to shut up. I said, "Emma knew about your cancer treatments. Where was she when you needed a friend? Why didn't she ever call you back then?" He went quiet. I feel stupid for ignoring all the red flags over the years and wasting 6 years of my life with him. My next step is hiring a lawyer and finding my own place. I feel so numb right now. I'm going to contact my brother to help me. Thank you, everyone. I will see a lawyer soon. My ex and I got in a huge argument tonight. We share a house that we are currently live in. He sleeps in our bedroom, I sleep in the spare room. He told me tonight that he wants his girlfriend to stay with him, yes, at our house, while she is in town. Can I legally call the police to kick her out? Or since house is under his name too, he can bring anyone and cops can't do anything? I suggested he moves out so he can invite whoever he wants, but he doesn't want to pay mortgage for our current house and rent for a place he would be staying. My husband just uncovered secrets from my past, and now I'm terrified our marriage might be over. Original post. I'll try and keep this short. We've known each other for 5 years, been married for 2 years, and up until last weekend things were perfectly fine. Maybe once in a while we'd bicker about money or something, but 99% of the time we were happy together. While out last weekend for a friend's birthday, a now ex-friend of mine told my husband about a relationship I had in college. My husband knew about my college boyfriend, but obviously I didn't share intimate details about our sex life. Well, it came out that I used to engage in threesomes with him and his male roommate. Probably 12, 15 in total, but all my husband knows is that it was more than once. College was a totally different time in my life. I was drinking every weekend, doing recreational drugs every month, partying, having casual flings, just like everyone else at that age. It was a hedonistic live-for-today lifestyle that I thankfully grew out of. I look back on those years with a lot of regrets, and not just about my sex life. I mean, it was 10 plus years ago. I'm a totally different person now. Regardless, I know my husband sees me in a totally different light. He hasn't slept in our bed since he found out, and he's barely spoken to me all week. I'm so scared he'll divorce me. I'm walking on eggshells just trying to stay out of his way while he works through this. I really want to sit him down and clear the air, I just don't know where to begin. I feel like one slip of the tongue and our relationship could be completely over. I know I'm not a good person for keeping this from him, so please don't lecture me. It was a chapter of my life I'd thought I'd closed for good. It was my one secret, and I honestly debated telling him about it but came to the conclusion that no positive outcome could come from it. TLDR, my husband, SM34 of 2 years found out some of my F31 sexual exploits in college. He has barely talked to me since he found out, and I'm afraid our relationship might be finished over something I did 10 years ago before I even knew him. Relevant comments. Commenter. People don't change that much. It could be that he just simply knows more about how you view sex now, and it may not be compatible with his own views. Pulling a three-way with 2 dudes, 10, 15 times? That's a whole lot of sucking and fucking. It shows a lot about how you like to be treated and what you crave. I honestly don't blame him for being creeped out about that. OOP, most times there was drugs or alcohol involved. It's not something I'd ever want to do at this age. Like I said, it was a lifetime ago. Puch 80. Is your husband upset that you used to be sexually adventurous because he has a moral problem with it? Or is it because you are not sexually adventurous with him? And I don't just mean having threesomes. I mean fun, passionate sex. OOP, he's never complained about our sex life. I didn't want to go into explicit detail, but people are asking and it's an anonymous account, so here it goes. My main limitation is that I won't do anal, which I know he enjoys. It's just not pleasurable and often painful for me. I don't like him coming on my face. Body is fine, in me is fine. And, not that he's ever asked, I'm done with group sex for good. Deleted. Honestly, I don't think you've done anything wrong, and if this, something that occurred when he wasn't in your life whatsoever, is a deal breaker for him, then you're better off. He's being a childish idiot about it. The past was meant to stay in the past, and I don't believe you were obligated to talk to him about your sexual exploits with previous partners. The way he is acting is ridiculous. I understand he may be bothered by it, but wow, handle it like a man, dude. OOP, I'm not better off without him. This is the man I love, we've built a life together. A divorce would completely ruin my life. How did her husband find out the information? He was talking to an old friend of mine on a night where we were all drinking. My friend claims it was a drunken slip of the tongue, but she has a history of pulling shit like this. I'm 100% done with her, I no longer consider her a friend. OOP added, no, I came to Reddit because I'm looking to save my marriage and don't want to discuss this with friends, family. Update. As of this morning, we still hadn't slept in the same bed or spoken more than 10 words to each other in passing. As I was waking up, he was walking in the front door with 2 coffees. He sat me down at our kitchen table and finally opened up to me. Basically, he feels that he was conned, his word, into the marriage, saying that he wouldn't have even dated me, let alone married me, if he'd known what he knows now. His view of me has been irreparably changed, and he no longer sees me as someone worthy of being his wife. Quoting him here, loving prick. Beyond the sexual aspect, he says he no longer trusts me because I kept something this big from him our whole relationship. Nothing I could do or say could convince him that these were past mistakes and not reflective of who I am today. He wasn't angry with me, didn't call me a slut or anything like that. Never once raised his voice. Part of me wishes he did, although I can't exactly say why right now. It felt like I was being laid off from a job. So that's it. We are getting divorced. My supposed life partner turned his back on me without a second thought. He didn't even have the decency to discuss it with me first. Apparently he visited his lawyer during the week and the process is in motion. His words. Knowing him, there is absolutely no changing his mind. My husband owns multiple businesses and wouldn't get married without a prenup. I signed it, honest to God, thinking we'd never, ever have to use it. Well, he had the loving document with him this morning. He said he'd pay off the remainder of my student loans, which he isn't legally obligated to do. While I appreciate that, I am going to meet with my lawyer this week and see if the agreement can be challenged in court. We have built a life together. I gave him 5 of the best years of my life and I've been 100% faithful to him. I don't deserve to be tossed out like a piece of trash. So that's it. My life turned upside down in the span of a week, over something I did 10 plus years ago before I even knew him. It's loving asinine. The thing is, even as I wrote the original post, in the back of my mind I knew he was through with me. He's ended friendships and business partnerships over less. TLDR, my husband finally spoke to me and is apparently proceeding with a divorce. Relevant comments. Deleted 1. I'm curious, why are you looking to challenge the prenup in court? Do you feel that you have a right to his assets or money from his businesses, or are you just being a vengeful person? Were you an investor or founding member of any of these projects with him? Were you instrumental in their development and success in any material way? Don't give me this emotional support crap. The whole time you were supposedly emotionally supporting him, he was using the proceeds from his businesses to provide for you. That's the deal in a marriage. Now that the marriage is ending, the monetary support from his businesses is going to be cut off from you. He's being generous by offering to pay off your loans. It sounds like you're just being a spiteful bitch looking to suck as much of his money as the legal system will allow. Deleted 2. It's within her rights to contest it and the courts will decide whether she has a case or not. OOP exactly. What do I have to lose? To protect his fragile ego, I have to start my life over at square one. I'll probably have to move in with my parents. I don't even know if I'll have a car by summer. I get why he's mad. I totally get it. He just didn't even give us a chance. He doesn't know our relationship won't work out. He didn't even try. He ran straight to his lawyer and exercised a contingency agreement without even talking to me. He's taking the coward's way out and it destroys my life in the process. Macaroni and milk. I seriously don't know what the fuck is going on in this thread where the devoted comments are about how it's all on you because you're a fucking liar. This is the same subreddit that will tell most posters that their sexual past is no one else's business, barring diseases or sex work. Maybe these people only read your update and assumed you hid both of those from him. I don't know. Either way, you did nothing wrong. If your sexual past was such a big deal for him, he should have asked you some questions, not just assumed you were some pure little angel living in a bubble just waiting for this one specific man to come whisk you away. If having a sexual past is a deal breaker and he didn't question you, that's on him. Not you. Lawyer up, make the split, and go find some guy who won't judge you for actions that happened 15 years ago and have no bearing on him whatsoever. OOP never said I was a virgin. We met when I was like 25, come on. Anytime I mentioned an ex-boyfriend, not sexually, just in conversation, like, oh, I went to destination with ex-boyfriend, he'd get pissy and unhappy. He never came out and said it, but I could tell it made him uncomfortable. So early on in our relationship, I made the conscious decision to stop talking about my past boyfriends completely. Am I the jerk for refusing to confess just to take communion at my brother's wedding? Original post, I, 31F, have 3 siblings, 40M, 38F, 27M, and we have a good relationship despite the age gaps between some of us. My older siblings are both married and so am I. The wedding in question is my younger brother's. My younger brother Luke is engaged to his GF of a year Emma, 28F. She is nice I guess, but we have never really clicked and are just polite to each other. Something important is that we are all Catholic, but not really hardcore ones, and some of us are even lapsed. I do believe this whole situation started just when I met her for the first time. I look younger than Luke and it has always been a sibling joke that I'm truly the baby of the family. Most people that meet us assume he is older than me, but nobody has had issues with it until Emma. The day I met her she kind of scoffed when I said I was happy the baby had a proper girlfriend. She has this weird thing about being the eldest in her family and refused to believe I was older than her until I showed her my ID. She has been hot and cold with me since then, often infantilizing me or trying to have a sort of boss attitude. I just let her be and usually ignore her since I have no time to try and beg for her friendship, so I'm just polite and civil, always include her when planning stuff but don't really make an effort. The family knows about it but we just shrugged it to different personalities. Then the wedding planning started. Emma decided I could not be in the wedding party since I was not married in a church, fine by me. Then she requested that the immediate family submit their dress planning so she could check it fits the wedding dress code, fine whatever. You see where this is going, I hope. You'll see I have not gone to confession or have communion in more than a decade. If I go to a mass for whatever reason I am respectful and simply sit or stay standing during the rites I don't participate in. Well, this is not good enough for her and she says I need to take communion during their wedding. I said no and she has not taken it well. For the most part I avoid her as I said before, but this time I wasn't gonna say yes or risk an issue. I told her that for taking communion one needs to go to confession and I didn't want to. She said all the immediate family is doing it and it will look bad if I don't. I told her sure fine, then I'll just go have communion in front of everybody but won't do confession. She said if this was gonna be my attitude I was uninvited from the wedding because I clearly wanted to ruin the day for her. I turned to my brother and told him thanks, gave him a thumbs up and went home. My family understood my reasoning and said they respect everybody's choices, but I shouldn't have said what I said. I told them I really don't want to go to the wedding anymore and I don't owe Emma explanations on my life. I only called my grandma because she heard what happened and asked me not to disrespect the church by doing the communion without confession. I promised I wouldn't do it and she is fine with me now. I got a text from my brother wanting to compromise, so I replied by asking if the other lapsed people are being made to take confession too. He said no because it was only nuclear family members. I find it funny since all the others are clearly older than her and she just behaves like this with me and the youngsters. AITA? Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. You should alert the priest to her behavior. He will ensure that she stops with her actions. She cannot make rules that do not exist in the church. I would send a quick email to him and let her deal with the consequences of her own actions. OOP. I actually considered it but I don't think I will since my grandma might be doing it herself. She has lapsed herself but didn't want me to be disrespectful, but she knows the priest that will be officiating and is not really happy with all the shit show. Why Emma is pushing this? I honestly believe it's more her trying to have authority over me than her religious views. My oldest brother finds it ridiculous but said he would not intervene unless I ask him to, which I appreciate cause despite Luke acting like a dipshit I don't want more drama. Commenter. Just consider that the less you do the longer this drama will go on. Maybe getting more people involved would actually shut her behavior down for good. OP, I don't want to give her the attention she craves. My grandma said she will handle it with the priest and I will simply sit down. My whole family and most of the common friends know already. Luke and Emma themselves told them and shot themselves. Demand an apology in order to go. I already told my parents I am not coming no matter what. They are clearly not pleased with how she spoke to me, but even more displeased with my brother, but we agreed on not intervening more. If he wants to marry her it's his decision. He's an adult and needs no permission, but what he would lose has been made clear to him. Commenter. I would let grandma handle it. She sounds feisty. How old is she? Oopie, my grandpa used to say she was like a firecracker lol. She's 81 and has been lapsed for like 25 years I think. She still has friends in the church community and all, but they respect her decision not to participate in the rites anymore. Commenter, yeah, I would definitely let her handle it then. Please keep us updated. I really want to know if the wedding even happens. OP, I am conflicted because I do love Luke very much but I dislike him right now. I know Grandma is fair and just. Also now I am sure Emma doesn't even know why Grandma is lapsed and might be in for a shock. Commenter, can't you just go get a blessing? I'm an atheist but my parents are hardcore Catholics and my dad became a deacon last year. They asked us, me and my siblings, to go get blessings as a compromise as none of us are religious. I still declined personally but my understanding is that going to get a blessing is common for non-confirmed and considered an act of participation. If you're just lapsed, rather than actively rejectful, then that seems like a perfect compromise, and one where you can pretend to be going for communion before crossing your arms before the priest, or whichever signal said church uses. OP, my issue is not about the blessing, it's that she singles me out and wants to have some sort of authority above me. A bunch of my family are lapsed but she has not made a big deal over it except of me. Her stupid argument falls apart because my oldest brother is also lapsed, but she doesn't seem to care or maybe she has not realized it. She has not mentioned anything to him, but is making a huge deal because I don't participate. One of the top comments, Lucky Effective 1564, NTA who died and made Emma Pope. OOP, LOL I will share this particular one with my grandma next time we talk. She is gonna love it. Update Post 1. Things have moved but I wouldn't call any of this a positive progress. I would like to clear something I kept seeing in the comments. I won't request a special blessing or go in the queue for communion. It isn't about the blessing or the compromise but the singling me out. I often just stay quiet or take a general family blessing if we go to weddings, etc. I have no issue with compromises. I have an issue with Emma and her ridiculousness. I don't know why she has this thing with me. I do look young but not like a teen or a child obviously. She has 2 younger sisters and is very authoritative with them. I have witnesses her being very my way or the highway with younger people so she has issues for sure. The confrontation from the last post was on Tuesday and today we had lunch at my grandma's. I think you should also know that my brothers have a tricky relationship, as in they are not as close with each other as they are with other siblings. My older brother Robert is very no-nonsense and he has never been a fan of Emma but he didn't think he should have to intervene because Luke is an adult and capable of navigating relationships. All this is going to be relevant I promise. We visit Grandma a lot since she lives by herself and we truly enjoy her company. Today we were all there because she is over this drama already. After a lunch, that was more like snacking to be honest, she asked us all to clear the air. Emma continued with her rant about me being a disrespectful person and that she was asking the bare minimum from me. My grandma asked her why she had no issue with her not taking communion and Emma said that she was her elder and for sure her reasons were more than a tantrum like it was in my case. She also repeated that she was asking this of all the siblings and I was the only one that was being difficult with her tiny request. This is where everything crumbled for her. I mentioned in the comments that Robert is also lapsed and he was already exhausted by this situation. He asked her why she had no issues with him not taking communion and she looked like a kid that was caught. She didn't have a proper answer. Robert then asked her if she even knew why he and Grandma became lapsed. She shook her head and looked at Luke for help. Luke on the other hand was staring angrily at Robert and I but said nothing. Robert explained to Emma he was the reason Grandma became lapsed. When Robert was a teen he came out as gay and was so worried about our grandparents' reaction since they were very active in the Catholic Church. Grandma felt awful about it and even worse when she went and spoke about this with the then priest of her church. That priest was super old school and told her that Robert was committing sins, he was going to hell, he needed to find his way, the whole 9 yards. Grandma didn't take that so well and simply stopped going to church and started spending that time with her grandchildren. Over the years she started getting into the whole community again but she decided she was done taking the sacraments. She respects parts of the church but can't fully reconcile with it. Emma was a bit confused since Robert is married to a woman and he explained he is bisexual and ended up with a woman just as he could have ended with a man. He also commented they are not married in the church but that didn't matter to her, like it mattered when it came to me. He asked her directly what was her problem with me. Long story short, she said I was rude since the beginning and kept treating Luke wrong. Oh, and I also was very snarky about looking younger than her. Crickets. She is a beautiful, successful woman so I still don't understand her obsession but it seems like she wants people to see I respect her and what she says. I just started laughing. She started crying and saying I turned my grandma against her. My grandma told her to stop blaming people for her being a negative person and she was always going to side with me over her. Luke got upset at that and asked her why she was not supporting him, and she simply said she doesn't support him being a lapdog for a crazy woman. More was said, nothing got truly resolved. I was kind of invited again but declined going. Grandma is undecided if she even wants to go at all. My older siblings told Luke they will go to the ceremony if he seeks couples therapy or at least therapy. My parents are having headaches and now dislike Emma so much they can't hide it. Oh. And yes, Grandma spoke with the priest and he wants them to do extra premarital counseling or he won't officiate. I hope they don't get married, but he is old enough to derail his life if he wants. I thank you for letting me vent, and my grandma loved the Pope joke. Update 2. My brother has gone too far and I decided to be done with him. He made our grandma cry and I think permanently damaged a lot of his relationships. I want to mention some of my cousins and other family members thought I was just stubborn and creating drama, but now there is no longer my side or Emma's side. Maybe he always felt this way, but the issue he has with Robert is absolutely ridiculous. He was so upset with what Grandma said about him being Emma's lapdog that he called her to speak about it. I was obviously not present for the conversation, but Grandma told me what happened and Luke confirmed it. He told her that it was unfair of me to ask Robert for help since he was her favorite grandchild and would get her to side with me no matter how wrong I was. He also told her that many of the cousins believe this and that it was so obvious since she even left her religion for him. He claimed the other LGBTQ+ members of the family, most were not even born when Robert came out by the way, doubted if she would do it for them. So Grandma explained to Luke and then call every single one of her grandchildren to ask them how they felt and explain to each a part we didn't know. She said that when Robert came out and she spoke with the old priest, he hinted about knowing of places to set Robert straight. Grandma had heard horror stories from these places and so had Robert, and they both spoke with my parents together about that not being an option at all. My parents never intended to send Robert there and are very casual Catholics, but Grandma wanted to cover the bases just in case. I was told Grandma sounded like she had been crying on the phone, and after the first couple of calls, which went from oldest to youngest, the group chat started to blow. Robert is livid. Our LGBTQ+ cousins are livid and say Luke lied. Even the cousins that were telling me to stop being a stubborn head are livid. By the time I was up for my call, I was already on the way to Grandma's. 2 of my cousins were already there and the youngest one, Sarah, 16F, was ready to literally fight Luke. For a bit of levity, Sarah is about 35 centimeters smaller than Luke and the image of her swinging at him made me laugh a bit. She asked if I was making fun of her and I just explained the whole mental image of her trying to hit him and she admitted it was kind of funny. What I didn't tell her is I would love to slap some sense into Luke. My grandma has been through so much in her life and this is not what we want for her. She looks puffy-faced and kept asking everybody if they truly felt unloved by her, saying she would do everything for any of us. Explaining how Robert was the oldest grandchild, but that didn't mean she loved the rest any less. She is a strong woman, but I think something inside her broke a little with the thought she hurt her grandchildren. It was a shit show, a big one, and I was just so done with Luke. My parents have been passive towards the situation so far because I asked them to, but after they heard what happened they told him they need time away from him. Robert is simply disgusted and decided to not speak with him anymore, which he communicated through the cousin group chat, with Luke's response being that this is why Emma's help on reigning all us would be so beneficial if we just let her. He also added how Robert never cared for him or anybody really and he just tried to be the center of attention all the time. He cited his coming out, his announcement he was gonna marry a woman, the birth of his child. It was ridiculous. He came out when Luke was a toddler and for many years only our parents and grandparents knew. He announced he was gonna marry his now wife through a text but didn't interfere or took from anybody. His child was born 4 months before Luke's graduation and apparently that was a big issue for Luke that he never commented. Maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm selfish like Emma claims, but I call bullshit on his tantrum. Every single one of the cousins has been helped, babysat, tutored, gotten out of trouble, you name it, by Robert. He isn't perfect, but he isn't the conniving ass Luke is claiming. Maybe Luke has always felt inadequate and we didn't notice. Maybe it was his last-ditch effort. Maybe Emma has manipulated him so far that he can't come back. It doesn't matter anymore. If he does marry Emma, I wish him the best. If he doesn't, I hope he goes to therapy. Regardless of what he decides, he burned so many bridges and hurt so many people. I don't see this resolving anytime soon. For now, I will focus on my grandma and making her feel better. I feel extremely guilty because it was Emma's situation with me that opened this can of worms. I know I shouldn't, but it's hard not to. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter: wow, it sounds like it is self-projection from Luke. He is the conniving asshole he is saying Robert is. OOP: Robert is the type of older cousin Sarah would call if she is drunk at a party and needs a safe ride. He also did it for Luke, which is why I don't get his deal. Commenter, irrational behavior is called that because it can't be rationalized. Luke is exhibiting very irrational behavior, which is why you'll never understand it. The best you can hope for is that he gets some serious therapy and pulls his head out of his ass sooner rather than later. OP, if he asked for help and apologized sincerely, I would be there in 2 seconds. He knew what he was doing when he spoke without Grandma. He knew it would cause her pain. He knew he would hurt Robert too. Robert might not be crying, but he feels bad about the situation. He has always looked out for everybody and even has pics of him holding every single one of us as babies all over one of his walls. I always knew they were not the closest of brothers, but this is too much. Commenter, this is not your doing. Understand this is all Emma's fault. She knows it too. I'd bet money she is realizing how much her need to feel superior to you is costing. Wait. OOP, logically, I know this is on Emma and Luke, but seeing my grandma so sad and trying to convince everybody she loves us makes me feel bad. I know she will bounce back though. Commenter. It may be that her purpose is to isolate him. Please tell your grandmother from another old lady not to doubt herself because Luke has decided to live in Crazy Town. OOP. I don't know anymore. He is still very active with our maternal family so far. I am unsure how they will react when or if they hear what happened because both families have a great relationship. He still has a strong support system when it comes to friends. Some even dislike or disapprove of Emma and are vocal about it. I am seriously on the wave that this was low-key less about me and more a poke to Robert. And thanks, she really needs a lot of love. Commenter, NTA your little brother and his fiancée sound insane, as he thinks y'all are obligated to let some unhinged random woman to rein you all in because he likes fucking her. With his tactics with your grandma, I think you need to stop saying this is all on Emma. Look back at her having an issue with you because of how you mistreat Luke. Which from your account doesn't seem happens. It sounds like your brother has created a narrative of the situation that is likely not recognizable as truth by anyone else. Maybe he resents being the kid and no one listening to him and figures he can get his way by acting victim. Who knows? OP, you hit a point I've been trying to avoid. Maybe he has been like this all the time and Emma is just putting a magnifier on it. I must say he was the center of attention when it was about him. Graduations, birthdays, presentations, engagement party. He got celebrated on his achievements just as loud as everybody else. Grandma tried to always be there, so did our parents. He was always invited to stuff, always asked for his opinion on group decisions. He has always been loved. Commenter. I posted this on the other post, but if she is such a good Catholic she should know you can't take communion anyway, since you weren't married in the church. I wouldn't break the rules for this psycho. Hope your brother gets away from her before she hurts any more people. OP, oh that is so out of the question now, I wouldn't go to that wedding even if the Pope himself asked me to. I am going no contact with Luke and so are most of my relatives due to his conversation with Grandma. I taught my autistic husband how to make pancakes and he has been making pancakes nonsense for 4 days. Original post. Today he has expanded into adding blueberries, chocolate chips, and strawberries into the pancakes. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Subtly drop him a video about crepes and expand to savory options. OOP, planning to. I love cooking and hoping this is a good way to introduce to him why I love cooking. Commenter 2. That's your house husband now. OOP. Actually I'm the house husband because my husband runs his own business doing his special interest of building things for people. Roofs, porches, kitchens, bathrooms, etc. People want to know how one man can do the work and better job of 12 men and it is just autism OOP on being married to an autistic significant other. OP, I fucking love have an autistic husband. I love how direct he is with me. If there is an issue in our relationship he will directly tell me instead of beating around the bush and letting it get worse. I have learned that love comes in many forms. He doesn't tell me he loves me, he makes me pancakes. Or he gives me a really cool rock. Or he writes love letters because he is awful at verbally saying how he feels. Or he tells me a really odd fact about rhinos out of the blue. I know my husband genuinely loves me because I am the only one he can make direct eye contact with. Update. Our son loves dinosaurs, so after a couple batches, my husband taught himself how to make pancake-shaped dinosaurs. And they come in a broad range of colors. Every morning our son draws him a different dinosaur to make and my husband flawlessly copies it into pancakes. I have known this man for 15 years and he has never cooked one pancake. Yet in a week and a half he was making high-quality pancake art. My mom-in-law told me she had her son tested and he was perfectly normal. Normal people don't spend 5 hours Googling equipment for a hobby they picked up less than a week ago. Normal people don't go balls to the wall for a brand new hobby and get obsessive until they achieve perfection. You know my husband is so bad at holding down a typical job. My in-laws would complain that my husband struggled holding down a simple high school after school because he simply could not focus on one task. He will learn one task, grow bored of it, and then quit to chase the next interest. He actually runs his own company because he got tired of a typical job. He builds roofs or redesigns kitchens, baths, and beds. Or he does minor builds like furniture or children's toys. There are 2 people in his company. Himself and me. My only job is answering the work phone because he hates talking to new clients. I love watching him work. He can go into a kitchen that needs remodeling and just stares at it. And then he comes back home and builds what he needs. Go back to the home, destroy the kitchen, and hang up new cabinets. Does he write anything down or measure anything? No. Why? Because the numbers are in my head. Same thing with the fucking pancakes. He doesn't use measuring cups because the pancakes tell me what they need. I swear next time his parents visit us they are getting a stack of autistic pancakes. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Your husband sounds amazing. You're lucky to have each other. P.S. The autism likely comes from Mill's side if she thinks everything is normal. Well, I thought everything my kids did was normal too. OOP, he is so much like his mom. She probably thinks he is normal because he acts so much like her. Both of them do things differently. Had OOP's husband been diagnosed properly based on his situation, OOP. Autism, ADHD and OCD is what my husband is diagnosed with. Commenter 2, the fact that your MIL had him tested and he's perfectly normal really gets me. If he's normal, what prompted her to have him tested? OOP, my husband was having trouble focusing and sitting still in class in elementary school. Teacher asked his parents to get him tested. And well, this was 1993 and since my husband is a white male who can walk, talk, use the bathroom independently, there is no way he could be one of those retarded children in special education. My mom-in-law swore up and down that there is nothing wrong with her son, he just has some quirks. And us new age millennials want to put a label on everything. There were plenty of kids like her son back when she was a young girl and they were fine. It wasn't actually until Elon Musk came out and said he has a form of autism. Both Elon and my husband talk the same. You can tell their brains are going 1,000,000 miles an hour and their mouth is trying to keep up and explain what they mean at the same time. Now my mom-in-law is finally learning that autism doesn't have a stereotypical look to it. And she is finally trying to come to terms that maybe there is something wrong with her son's quirks. My sister sabotaged my wedding. And now, with her struggles to conceive, my parents want her to share my baby. As a little background, my sister Pam, 30F, persuaded our parents and a few of our family members not to come to my wedding. She believed it was inappropriate for me to marry her while she was divorcing. She turned to lying and spreading rumors to get people to avoid me because the truth alone wasn't enough to make them hate me. My spouse and I recently shared on social media that I am currently in my 2nd trimester of pregnancy. I am 27F. My parents and Pam learned about it in this way, and after we had not spoken for over 3 years, they tried to mend things with me. Why? Pam is sadly unable to conceive due to her infertility. Despite the fact that she has failed multiple IVF cycles, she is adamant about trying again. Pam does not believe that surrogacy or adoption are the best options for her at this time. Since I'm expecting a child, my parents thought it would be beneficial to make amends with Pam so she could spend time with a child who is not directly linked to her. They even proposed that the child have 2 mothers, saying that this would benefit me because I would receive more assistance. My parents really only want to pretend to be a happy family, now that Pam is unable to have children of her own. During the call, I was able to see through their phony politeness. I informed them that I would not accept this idea and that it was completely irrational to expect me to comply. To be honest, it was ridiculous that they even believed I would think about letting Pam act as the mother of my future child. I clarified that they shouldn't have done it because I was expecting a baby and they wanted to give Pam a plaything, but rather because they truly loved me and were sorry for how they treated me. They took issue at what I said, claiming that Pam was prepared to volunteer for her future niece or nephew and that they were just providing assistance because they knew I would require assistance when the kid was born. They said I was being too harsh and that it was all perfectly innocent. I replied that my husband and in-laws were already providing me with all the assistance I required because I was the mother. They should keep avoiding me in the future if it was easy for them to do so in the past. Here's where I might have gone too far. I suggested that Pam might not be able to conceive because she was a horrible person and wouldn't be a good mother. My parents, a few family members, and of course Pam herself sent me a ton of texts after that call. They all demand that I should apologize to them, claiming that what I said was needless and unkind. I shouldn't kick people when they're already down, they say. The issue is that I can still clearly recall every event leading up to my wedding, and I harbor deep animosity toward Pam for her actions. I find it hard to feel bad about what I said. To put things in perspective, while I was organizing my wedding, Pam had already been married for 2 years. Prior to their marriage, she and her ex-husband had been dating for 3 years, and she had always understood his desire to live a childless life. When they began talking about their future after a year of dating, it was among the first things she brought up to our parents. Even though I was in the room at the time, they continued their chat as usual, acting as though I wasn't there. Another problem is that even as a child, Pam and I have never gotten along. She has always been the beloved daughter of our parents. When we were younger, we used to quarrel a lot, but eventually we just learned to ignore one another. She therefore knew for a fact that she wanted children in the future, even if she was telling our parents that her ex-boyfriend preferred a childless existence. In the end, they agreed to bring up the subject again when they were married, and she hoped that by then, he would have changed his mind. She tried to persuade him to have children, but he refused to change his views, and they started fighting a lot. She would frequently look very distraught at family gatherings and tell about how hard it was to stay with him all the time. Her decision to wed a man who had made it apparent that he didn't want children was, in my opinion, her fault. It was she who thought she could make him reconsider. However, she had no right to hold him responsible when she was unable to. Naturally, I kept all of this to myself since I knew it would just cause more problems. I tried to persuade him for a few months before my parents informed me that Pam had returned to live with them permanently following a heated argument with her husband. They told me there was no way out of it at this point. My spouse and I had just begun making deposits for our wedding at this point. After almost 4 years of dating, we had been engaged for a few months. We had waited until we were both comfortable in our employment, even though we had been prepared for marriage for a while. My parents therefore told me that they wanted me to put off my wedding forever when they told me that Pam and her husband were going to divorce. They didn't want me to marry Pam at the same time she was divorcing in order to offend her. They said that Pam already had it difficult because she had to postpone her intentions to have a baby. They said that I should not forward with my wedding in order to spare her feelings because she truly wanted to become a mother. It was likely the most ridiculous and inconsiderate thing they had ever tried to get me to do. I informed them, of course, that I would not delay my wedding for Pam. Whether she liked it or not, I was going to marry. Since we were never close, I didn't care what she thought about my wedding. But my choice did not sit well with my parents. They were upset because I wasn't prepared to put their beloved daughter's sentiments ahead of my own wedding arrangements. They warned me that they wouldn't go if I didn't postpone the wedding. I knew my parents had a soft place for Pam, but I never imagined they would go to such lengths for her, so that was incredibly upsetting and devastating to me. Nevertheless, I accepted it and informed them that they may do as they pleased. Pam wasn't content, even though it should have been the end of it. She didn't like that I was getting married, so she made sure the rest of the family didn't come either. She initially only tried to win people over by saying that it was rude of me to get married while she was going through such a difficult period. Although the majority expressed sympathy for her, they did not specifically state that they would not attend my wedding. She made the decision to step it up after realizing this. She began spreading stories about me because the truth wasn't contentious enough. Pam started claiming that I had been persuading her husband to divorce her because I was envious of her and couldn't bear the idea of her having a child before me. I had never been friends with her spouse, so the allegations were ridiculous. If he and I had ever gotten close, I genuinely doubt Pam would have married him at all. People began to believe her, though, for some reason. She even claimed that I had been bothering her by convincing her spouse that he would be happier without her and manipulating him to leave her. Pam claims that I was to blame for his lack of desire for children since I had reportedly persuaded him that having no children was the way to go for our generation. All of it was false. I assume she lied so firmly that others started to believe her, even though I hadn't really engaged with my brother-in-law when he was married to Pam. Many folks turned down my wedding invites. A couple of my supportive cousins and other family members told me about Pam's comments, so I already knew why. I wasn't shocked to learn that no one provided me with a detailed explanation for their refusal. Only a few relatives and a few individuals from my side of the family came to my wedding. Everyone else was either a friend or a co-worker. On the bride's side, the attendance was dreadfully poor. In the weeks before the wedding, I recall being really furious about all of this. Many individuals had already made up their minds, and some had even blocked me, but I knew I could try talking to them and being honest. I didn't bother because it would have been my word against hers. Fortunately, my spouse, friends, and in-laws were there to support me on the wedding day. I barely noticed that so many of my family members weren't present because they made sure I had so much fun. I haven't forgiven Pam for what she did though, simply because I had a good time on my wedding day. She was vengeful and vicious in what she did. She made sure I wasn't happy just because she didn't get her way, which was quite typical of her. She had been like way since she was a child, but most people get over those habits, especially by the time they are in their late 20s. Regretfully, I am unable to say the same for her. I cut her and my parents off entirely after that incident, and my animosity toward them only deepened. I saw Pam's ex-husband for the first time since their divorce around a year later. One day while my husband and I were out to lunch, we noticed him eating with some of his coworkers. We weren't expecting him to greet us, so it was a little awkward, but he approached our table, congratulated us on our wedding, and expressed regret for not being there. He clarified that it was because of my sister's predicament. We were also courteous because he was chit-chatting, and my husband even made a joke about how he might as well have come because Pam didn't show up. Pam's ex-husband then appeared truly perplexed. At that point, we began discussing the events leading up to the wedding. He revealed how Pam had repeatedly postponed the mediation sessions and postponed the divorce by claiming she was too preoccupied with getting ready for my wedding. When her ex-husband learned she hadn't even gone, he became perplexed. Her sudden interest in my wedding had surprised him, but he had refrained from confronting her because he didn't want to accuse her of postponing the divorce out of fear. He just dealt with everything as calmly as he could. We discussed the facts after he gave us his version of events, which included Pam's failure to attend the wedding, her spreading false information about me, and her accusation that I was attempting to end her marriage. After expressing his shock that Pam would act in such a manner, he revealed the true cause of their split. It was a far deeper issue than a dispute over having kids. After months of arguments about whether or not to have children, her ex-husband finally began to take her point of view into consideration and was on the verge of changing his mind. She told him something that made all the difference the day he made the decision to talk to her about it. She appeared ecstatic when he informed her that he was at last prepared to think about being a parent. Then, in what she believed to be a jest, she said that he would have had to accept it sooner rather than later, even if he hadn't been prepared. She acknowledged that she had surreptitiously stopped taking her birth control pills without notifying him when he asked her to explain. She might have gotten pregnant if they had kept going that way, making plans for him to simply deal with it. He was unable to accept this perverse scheme. She had deceived us into believing that their disagreements were solely about having children, but in reality, their most recent dispute had been about her treachery. Pam made an effort to make it seem lighthearted, but it didn't make her actions any less serious. In essence, she was attempting to trick him into becoming pregnant so that he would be forced to accept the pregnancy at any time. My husband and I were more clearer on why she had behaved so erratically around the time of our wedding after that talk with her ex-husband. She was aware that she was to blame for her divorce. She could have kept it to herself and none of this would have occurred, even if she had taken the risky decision to stop taking her birth control. She may have even given birth to a child with her spouse, but she ruined everything for herself before venting her frustration on me. I became much more resentful of her after discovering all of this. I had the option of telling my parents and other family members the truth, but I decided against it. I had already severed my connections with people who hadn't been at my wedding by that point, and to be honest, I just wanted to get on with my life. I made the decision to remain silent and continue. But to be honest, I don't feel bad about what I said because I hate her so much. I genuinely think it's fortunate that she hasn't been able to have children because I don't think someone with her personality could be a decent mother. The fact that she and my parents only contacted me because I am pregnant and they wish to play happy family with my unborn child further bothers me. That simply will not occur. Regarding the notion of my child having two mothers, I concur with my in-laws and my spouse that it is not essential. People's reactions to my comment, especially those with whom I get along, are the only reason I'm even slightly unsure. So am I the jerk for suggesting that my sister might not make a good mother, which is why she hasn't been able to conceive? In response to inquiries, Pam has not remarried and, to the best of my knowledge, is not currently seeing anyone. Although I don't know much about her personal life, I've learned from friends and family that she is totally unmarried and that her primary goal at the moment is to have children. You can guess why she isn't interested in adopting a child or using a surrogate. In my opinion, it's because she feels that a child isn't truly your child unless you've given birth to it yourself. She has been trying for over 3 years, including when she tried to conceive with her spouse and when she used donors for IVF following the divorce. So far, nothing has worked for her. Most people would think about other choices by now, but she isn't interested, and that's her decision. The fact that she and my parents only tried to reconcile after I revealed my pregnancy is what truly seems odd. The remark about two mothers stuck with me. Additionally, you all observed that they made particular reference to the fact that this baby would be linked to her by blood. Technically speaking, my child would be her blood relative because she is my biological sister. However, Bringing it up while trying to make amends is odd, and their actions simply gave off a disturbing, almost baby stealer atmosphere. I'm afraid she'll start projecting and acting like the mother if I do try to forgive her and give her some contact with my child. I can't allow that to occur. Some of you have questioned why I haven't defended myself in front of the rest of the family or spoken out about the true cause of her divorce. In all honesty, I don't believe it's worth it. I became aware of my true friends and supporters after the wedding. Everything that transpired deeply wounded me, and even though I wanted to speak out about the truth, I decided against it. I wanted to be left alone. Even a few family members with whom I get along well said that I was a little callous when I told Pam that she couldn't have children. Although they don't expect me to apologize, they do believe it was a little too severe. These folks have always stood behind me, so that's why I'm worried. If they too think I was too severe, then maybe I should be worried. Update 1. I appreciate all of the comments left on my post. I appreciate your support, even though it seems like most of you believe I'm NTA. I will continue to ignore Pam and my parents, and I have made the decision not to apologize to them. They are obviously unhappy about this. On social media and in real life, they are acting like the victim and disparaging me in front of our family members once more. I already don't talk to those people, so I'm not bothered by it. What could possibly go wrong? That they will further isolate me. I made the decision to talk to my family members that support me yet disagree with my remark and address it. Almost everyone in the family is aware of what happened and what I said, and Pam and my parents have made a big issue out of it. I reached out to people who truly care about me since I won't engage with someone I don't get along with. I admitted to them that, in the heat of the moment, I had uttered those things. However, that doesn't change the fact that Pam's deliberate attempt to draw attention to herself during my wedding was much worse. For years, Pam has been mean and disrespectful to me, and I won't say I'm sorry for something that might even be true. She won't be significantly impacted by my remark, at least not in the same manner that she did me when she created rumors. Because of what she said, my family declined to come to my wedding. It's not the same thing because my viewpoint won't stop her from being pregnant. Those who were on my side are still supportive, and my relatives seem to understand this. I'm okay with them deciding not to talk about it anymore. All I want is for my pregnancy to be a joyful and healthy one. I hope this tension between Pam and my parents ends quickly. I don't want them to stretch this out because I might have to tell them some things they won't like. This is something I really don't want to deal with, especially now that I'm expecting. Update 2. My parents have been playing the victim and informing everyone in the family about what I said for the past 2 weeks since I last spoke to them on the phone. They have been pleading with others to avoid me, to never communicate with me again, and even to cut me off from family members that get along well with me. They basically want me shunned by the entire family. My parents haven't been successful in their strategy though, because as I indicated, I was able to work things out with the people I care about. They obviously didn't like it, so they posted disparaging remarks about me on social media. I am aware that the posts are about me even if they haven't specifically mentioned me. They have been discussing a particular relative who has always tried to ruin lives, and always been jealous of Pam. That's why I allegedly made fun of her infertility, they say. I knew it was all lies, so at first I didn't care. But it really got to me when they recently posted that I was the one who destroyed Pam's marriage. I chose to reply since they were repeating the same falsehoods they had told me around the time of my wedding. I made contact with my former brother-in-law. Even if we don't communicate frequently, we are on speaking terms because we still greet one another on holidays and on our birthdays. I told him everything that had been going on and asked if he would mind if I told the truth in public. I did what he told me to do. The drama has escalated since I wrote about Pam's actions and the true cause of their divorce. Although I haven't spoken to anyone directly, family members have been calling, texting, and emailing me to ask whether it's true, to ask me to remove the post, and even to accuse me of lying about Pam once more. None of them have received a response from me. My parents and Pam, on the other hand, have remained remarkably silent, which suggests that they have little to defend themselves. They'll find words though, I'm sure. Even after all of this, it's disheartening that no one in the family has bothered to apologize to me, but it's okay since it's exactly what I anticipated. I believe I've been successful in exposing Pam for who she truly is, which was my major objective. I'm just going to relax and observe what happens next. Update 3. Pam and my parents finally contacted me a few days after my last post, stating that they were prepared to apologize. But only if I consented to have my post removed. The rest of the family hasn't expressed regret to me, but they seem to have contacted my parents and Pam to criticize their actions. They told my parents that it was unfair to portray me negatively when Pam was ultimately to blame for her divorce. My relationships with my parents have suffered greatly as a result of their years of deceiving the family. It's amazing how fast certain family members went from detesting me to betraying Pam. However, as I already stated, I don't hold it in high regard for those who assumed that I was the cause of Pam's marital issues. They're now equally eager to assume that she was at fault from the beginning. They still refuse to say sorry, and the majority of them have ceased getting in touch with me. No one is requesting me to remove the post, and no one is interested in knowing if I was speaking the truth. I replied to Pam and my parents that I would wait to remove the post until I felt like it. I don't care about their apologies anymore. I responded to their email correspondence and subsequently blocked them. They haven't made an attempt to get in touch with me since, but this morning I made the decision to remove the post, not for them, but rather because I don't want my social media accounts to be overflowing with posts about unimportant people. Retaliation isn't beneficial, and as I mentioned, I want a pleasant and healthy pregnancy journey. Furthermore, I believe that's sufficient punishment for Pam and my parents because they are who they are. I have family and friends who truly care about me, and my spouse and I are content. I really only need that. It doesn't really matter what my sister and parents are doing these days. I hope they understand after everything that has transpired that I don't want to interact with them ever again and avoid me. That's all I have to say, and considering everything that has happened, I doubt they will get in touch anytime soon. I'm grateful to everyone who has helped me, answered my messages and given me guidance. It is really important to me. Mysterious bloodstains in my bed lead to a shocking discovery. Hidden black mold in my attic room causing my hay fever symptoms. Let me just start by saying that I am a man, and so I don't get a period. I have been living on my own in Amsterdam for a while now. It's a nice little room in the attic. It's old, nice, and feels very cozy. I don't live in a dorm, but I live with an older lady who has 2 cats. I'm allergic to myself, so when those cats come this way I chase them out the door. Now I have a problem. A few days ago I woke up with clothes on, my closet turned over and clothes on the floor. Shit. Sleepwalking can happen. Now things are getting a little weird. On the entire left side of my double bed, from head to toe, there is a long trail of blood. As if something bloody has been running over it. This can't be the cats because they don't come into my room at night, and it also seems unlikely to me that an injured animal has been walking there because if something bleeds that much it should be visible somewhere else in the room, right? It also seemed unlikely to me that I myself bled a vertical trail in my sleep, but I didn't think anything else of it. I cleaned it up and that was that. But this morning, a few days later, I woke up blood everywhere again on that side of the bed. And with blood everywhere, I really mean a trail you can't miss. And the smell. I woke up because of the smell and not even my alarm clock. 6:30. I went to ask the housewife what she thinks this could be. She smiled for a moment and said, "Maybe your room is haunted." Well, that didn't make it better. I'm now sitting in the bathroom scrubbing that sheet again and trying not to throw up. I don't know what's going on here, but could this be a weird hazing problem? And by that I mean student hazing. Is this a normal thing they do in Amsterdam? Smear blood on your bed? I'm just saying. I'm from Brussels. I know there are weird things happening here. I don't get it at all, especially because I've scanned my whole body and there are no wounds anywhere. Has anyone experienced something similar? Is my room genuinely possessed? Sorry if this is a stupid question, but I'm kind of done with it. Relevant comments. Commenter, have read this before. Someone who had bled from his ears. You don't often see that, so it's logical that you don't see a wound. Have your ears checked. And place a camera if you're not sure. Maybe just block the door on the inside or something. OOP, I'm definitely going to do that. Good idea? I'll ask the doctor right after class today to schedule an appointment. Commenter, please go get a carbon monoxide meter from Action Praxis, those things are €10. Nausea and smelling things that aren't there, you mentioned sulfur, are both symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, plus the fact that this is happening in winter, so you probably have more heating stove on than normal. OP. I'm pretty scared of this now. I just checked the symptoms online and they do match. I'm going straight to the hardware store after class. Starting to get nervous about this, haha. Commenter. Perhaps something about bedbugs that you roll flat in your sleep after they feed. OP, yuck. It's on the comforter though. Don't think I rolled over them, but could have been an answer. Commenter. You specifically mentioned that the first time that you woke up with clothes on, different clothes therefore than you had fallen asleep with. Were there other weird things this morning or just blood? OP, yes, different clothes than what I went to bed with. I went to sleep in my pajamas, logical, and I woke up with my sweater and jeans on. I have never walked before, this morning only blood. Thank God. Otherwise I would have scheduled an appointment with the psychologist. Update. Few days later. Update. For the past few days I've been staying at my friend's house, see if it's mysteriously bleeding there too. I ordered a camera, and nothing happened. Until yesterday morning. I went back home, went to the doctor on the way because I suffer from hay fever. And once home just checked the cats for being in heat. Turns out they're both male, unfortunately. I set up the camera in a can, thanks to whoever advised that, and went into the space behind my room with a CO detector to measure it. The second I got in there I smelled a very familiar smell, exactly the smell that vaguely smelled like blood. Now that I know what it is, I would associate it more with meat, but the smell of blood came very close. Anyway, I grabbed the CO detector, shirt in front of my nose and put that thing to work. Nothing wrong. Anyway, I called my friend because the smell was very specific. She was there within an hour, and she too thought it smelled very strangely of blood. It's a large attic, which smells of blood and rotted flesh, and there are things everywhere in the dark. Of course my imagination ran wild. My girlfriend also started to get the jitters, and after an hour of pondering we decided to call the police. Well, they showed up on my doorstep after 4 hours, and together we went upstairs. The police also smelled the odor, and it was so convincing that some other special agents were called in before they went up into the attic. Very long story short. After a long wait and search they didn't find a body, but they did find mold. All over the wall against my room. Under the baseboards. On the roof. Black mold everywhere. Immediately relieved that my landlord wasn't a murderer, but black mold isn't a fun joke either. In the meantime, I've moved all my stuff and am temporarily living with my girlfriend until the problem is solved. Even then, I don't know if I'll go back, because the landlord wasn't very happy that I kind of suspected her of murder. But that's another story. It's funny because as the doctor said when I came in with my hay fever, it's remarkable that you're suffering from it now. He was right. The itchy eyes, the nosebleed in my sleep, yes it turned out to be a nosebleed, the sleepwalking, the tired days, everything in place. End of story. I do want to thank you all individually for your kind messages and earnest attempts to help. Thanks to you, I went behind the room to check that meter. I wonder if I would have found out about the fungus if I hadn't. Thanks so much really. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I get it's not as bad as a body, but the thought of there being black mold all around me in the walls, growing day after day is still skin-crawling awful. And I wish more people realized how shit hay fever, and other allergies is and how many symptoms there are. I think people think it's just sneezing a bit, not the weeks of misery some of us experience. Comment 2. The lady's reaction of, maybe your room is haunted. Makes me feel like she knew there was a problem but they just didn't want to deal with it. Which is why the landlord is unhappy. Since now the authorities are involved they have no choice but to clean it up. I get uninvited from my brother's wedding, then get harassed by his family for not caring enough. Original post. This whole thing is so weird. 27M, am gay. I came out at 16 and my parents told me they would always love me, but to not mention it to my older brother who I'll call Brick. Then 19M 30M now. When I was confused and asked why they said that Brick had expressed some awful opinions about gay people. I limited talking to Brick until I moved out at 18, which wasn't much of a problem because we were never close. I went to uni, got a good job, and an awesome boyfriend, 28M, in my home city. Me and my boyfriend Angel live a peaceful life. Peaceful until a few days ago when I got a call from my brother. I was concerned that Brick was calling me, as we have never messaged before, just had each other's numbers for emergency purposes. I picked up because maybe there was some emergency happening. He opened the call with an annoyed, "Hey man," and I knew something was up. He said he was getting married to his fiancée Yen, 24F next year. I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. I was like, "That's great Brick," and asked some boring wedding things that he begrudgingly answered. He then told me invites were being sent out in a couple weeks, and that I could bring a +1. Here's where I made the mistake that started this mess. Without thinking like an idiot, I said, "Cool, I'll bring my boyfriend." Major mess up. Brick immediately started yelling insults down the line, screaming that he wouldn't have an FF slur at his wedding. I didn't say anything and just hung up. I was rattled by hearing those words from my own brother's mouth, even though I knew his feelings about people like me. I told Angel, and he comforted me, ordering in my favorite restaurant and watching movies with me, which was awesome. We went to bed later and I felt alright the next day. I sent my parents a message that Brick invited me and uninvited me from his wedding pretty much in the same breath, and went on my way to work, not a clue of the crap storm waiting for me when I got off. When I turned my phone on again after my shift, it was blowing up. Messages and calls from my parents and relatives galore asking me what the F happened. I phoned my parents back when I got home and gave them the rundown of what happened and said I honestly didn't care because it's not like Brick would be coming to my wedding anyways. My parents immediately chastised me for my obvious disinterest and disregard of my brother's life, and told me I should be apologizing to him for bringing my personal life into his wedding. What? I basically told my parents to screw off and have been getting bombarded with messages from relatives to apologize to my brother and get my invite reinstated, and apologize to my parents for disrespecting them, but I really don't want to. Angel's reassuring me that I did nothing wrong, but it's still nagging me. AITA, relevant comment. OK_number_4988. Why did your brother sound annoyed at the beginning of the call? Did he already know? Or was he being forced to invite you by your parents? Seems weird. OOP, he's never been my biggest fan, honestly. We were very different as kids, like polar opposites, and he didn't like that. Very on brand for him. He definitely didn't know I was gay before the call. My parents have kept it very under wraps for years. In terms of if he was being forced to invite me by my parents, I really have zero clue. Update post. My OG post got locked was removed per some misunderstanding/confusion with the AITA mods while trying to post this update, but I'll just post it on my page here without an r/ if anyone wants to see it. Y'all have really opened my eyes on a lot of issues in my family. I apologize for only replying to a few comments. There's just so many of you. Big shout out to all the people who gave compliments to Angel. I showed him this post last night and he thanks you all. I've been showing him lots of love because he really is an angel. And to the people calling this fake, AI, cliche and whatnot. I hate to break it to you all, but this is just my life. It sounds cliche because this is the sort of all too real thing that happens to many people in the community. Just move along if you want to say that stuff, because you're honestly just wasting your time. One of two things I would also like to address is people questioning me about thinking I could possibly be the AH in this situation, and all I can say is that when you have a mass of people telling you you're wrong for what you did, it's hard to not maybe believe them just a little bit, no matter how absurd it is. Second thing, for people wondering how no one in the family knew I was gay, I really was never am not close with my extended family, as they all live in different provinces, and my immediate family never traveled. We really just send each other holiday and birthday messages and have brief conversations whenever those are sent, and I just never had the urge to come out to them. Anyways, on to the update. I decided I didn't want to let this sit for any longer. I took a day off work, and I added my parents, Brick, and all the family that messaged and called me into one big group chat, per one advice I saw here. I laid out everything that went down to them, in case they were told a different story by my parents and brother. I told them that I was going NC with my parents and Brick no matter what, and if they didn't apologize and realize what they did wrong, or I cut them off too. I turned my phone off and continued on without it for the rest of the day. Once I turned my phone on again, I had lots of messages from them. My parents were outraged, and Brick said nothing. Some of my extended family apologized and told me that my parents just told them I was mean to Brick about some of his wedding plan choices, which got me uninvited. Still trying to wrap my head around how stupid that is. Seriously think my parents might be Neanderthals. Anyways, the real story made others even more angry and more insistent that I apologize, and they were promptly blocked. I didn't answer any of my parents' texts, calls and blocked them. I feel like I have a weight off my shoulders. I'm not concerned about my parents showing up at our apartment, as they moved away from my city last year. Me and Angel are planning a lovely trip, per advice of a lot of people that we thought was great, to France to visit his family during when the wedding will be taking place, which I'm very excited for. I've heard nothing but good things about them. This will most likely be my only update on this post, and I thank you all for your support. Mom sold our dad's house to buy her new husband a boat. Now she's begging me for a place to stay after he left. Behind our backs, Mom sold our dad's house to purchase a yacht for her unemployed new husband, who later left her for someone else. She spent all the money and now begs to live with me. If that's the right description in this context, my 50F mother has had a pretty interesting life. My grandparents felt that women should take care of the home and family, so it was okay that she was never a good student. She still adheres to the same values that she was raised with. At the age of 20, 2 years after graduating from school, she married my dad. She gave birth to my older sister Jasmine, now 29F, when I was 21, and to me Bianca, now 27F, 2 years later. Dad was always closer to my sister and me. He was quite supportive, although he didn't agree with Mom. He made it a point to always be there, enrolled us in a number of extracurricular activities, and pushed us to succeed academically. I enjoyed drawing, So Dad surrounded me with art tools. Dad also made sure my sister never missed a day of soccer practice since he saw her potential there. My mother was tremendously annoyed by the fact that he was constantly there for us. She disapproved of our pastimes. She disliked that we were intellectually minded, and as a result of our nature, and Dad's encouragement, she actually lost a lot of respect in her family. We were disliked by my maternal grandparents in particular. When Dad died when I was 11, everything changed. He died a few days after being hospitalized following an automobile accident. My mother suffered a severe financial and emotional setback as a result, and naturally, so did the rest of us. We were done financially, but I don't want to discuss the mental turmoil we endured since it is irrelevant. We didn't have enough insurance to pay for the thousands of dollars Dad's hospital stay had cost. My mother had no savings of her own because she was unemployed, and the majority of his savings were used to cover the bills. I recall that we had to sell a lot of our belongings a few weeks following his passing. My sister stopped attending soccer practice, I sold my painting supplies, and we were assigned housework. I detested every aspect of my life's transformation, but since I was still reliant on my mother, there was nothing I could do about it. My paternal grandparents helped out at that point. They lived 3 states away, so we didn't see each other very often, so we had never been close, but they were always kind to me when I did see them. My grandfather was startled to learn that Mom had sold my belongings to make ends meet when he came to see us. He offered to pay for our interests and pastimes, but my mother rejected the idea, claiming she needed the money to support us rather than to finance our useless interests. She advised him to send money for power or groceries if he so desired. My grandfather became irritated and offered to cover the additional expenses if she worked to earn a living. She was in charge of making sure we survived, and he would only assist if she did her job. That's what happened when my mother said no. My mother was still receiving donations from family members and hadn't begun working at that time. Additionally, we had a lot of these handouts in some months and almost nothing in others. Our expenses were primarily covered by her parents. Because she sincerely believed that it was a man's job to provide, she flatly refused to find a job, claiming that the males in her family had a responsibility to support her. For several months, this continued, and her parents felt sorry for her and us and they took care of us. However, that money suddenly stopped being received on a regular basis. Due to Mom's extreme financial hardship, Jasmine and I had to work to supplement our income. We could be seen at a neighbor's house every weekend, weeding their garden, strolling their dog, etc. Even though it was difficult, Mom didn't start working. When her parents finally had enough, they sat her down to have a conversation. They informed her that they could no longer provide for her and us since they had made plans for how they would spend their retirement years and could no longer afford to care for us. Mom was really surprised by this since she had thought that because Dad had passed away, her father should be responsible for looking after us because men provide. Given how my grandparents had brought her up, it was difficult to dispute with such reasoning. However, they were now shifting their position. According to them, the husband's role was to support his wife, and if he passed away, the wife would have to take care of the children. My mom and her sister had been informed that all of their possessions would pass to their brother, so they were effectively cutting her off. There was a lot of crying and name-calling during the confrontation, but my grandparents refused to back down. My mother sought assistance from Auntie Janice, her sister. Now, Auntie Janice loved us and was a wonderful woman. Although they didn't spend much time with us, her husband, a surgeon, was willing to assist. However, the amount of money we received from them was insufficient to sustain a family of 3. Mom then returned to my paternal grandparents. In exchange for my mom working, my grandfather was more than happy to assist. We couldn't have survived without their assistance, so she was forced to accept. Our lives had returned to normal after she secured a well-paying housekeeping position at a neighboring hotel. We were able to return to a comfortable lifestyle with the assistance of our grandfather and uncle. For the next 2 years, until I was 14 and my sister was 16, this arrangement persisted. Our mother introduced us to Dan at that point. Her new lover, Dan, was interested in marrying her. After just one glance at him, Jasmine and I felt repulsed. I'm not kidding when I say that he smelt and looked like a pig. It seemed like he hadn't taken a bath since high school. He had a lost expression on his face and smelled like cigarettes, as though he was unable to hear anything that was said to him. Needless to say, Jasmine and I harbored a deep hatred for him in addition to our disapproval. Regretfully, Mom professed to be deeply in love with him. Jasmine and I were pledged to silence, and they were married in a hush-hush ceremony. We had to keep Mom's second marriage a secret from Dad's side of the family. She was concerned that our grandparents would discontinue the monthly payments if they learned, and because it was a sizable sum, we truly couldn't have survived without it. Jasmine and I therefore said nothing. When Mom married Dan, I'm not sure what was going through her mind, but I believe she believed that if she married and had a guy in her life, she wouldn't have to work any longer and he would take care of everything. She quit her work and returned home a week after they were married, so I'm sure she assumed that Dan's unemployment was the issue. It was a persistent one. He was only able to work for 2 months at a time, after which he would spend his time playing video games at home and only hunt for a new job when he became tired of them. This man didn't intend to support any of us, so all of Mom's dreams came crashing down. In order to get some spending money, Jasmine and I resumed working odd jobs for people. Therefore, my mother's sister's husband or my father's parents provided the majority of the family's income. To put it mildly, it was dysfunctional, and Jasmine and I were eager to go. We concentrated on school and our part-time jobs, avoiding contact with Mom and Dan. For the following 4 years, until I departed for college and stopped talking to Mom, this was the setup. Mom and Dan were having issues by the time I was about to leave. To be honest, neither my sister nor I were surprised to learn that Dan was not just unemployed but also a chronic cheater. Things were messy, but Mom continued ignoring them or forgiving him. After I started college, I stopped talking to my mother. My mother somehow always knew what was happening in my life since I kept in touch with my grandparents, aunt and uncle. I found a respectable career after graduating from college at the age of 23. The issue was that my promotions and raises were little because I graduated just before COVID. Life kind of stopped for a while because I was unable to save as much as I had hoped. The wonderful grandpa offered me some assistance, but I declined because I didn't want to burden him. Fortunately, I didn't lose my job, so I shouldn't be too upset. I received a significant pay increase and a promotion at work a few months ago. Since I had also saved money over the COVID years by living as cheaply as possible, this put me in a good position to purchase a modest home. Despite my goal of owning a home by the age of 25, I was content with the 2-year wait. I'm not sure how, but my mother discovered that I had purchased a home. She called me and said she had not seen her baby in a long time and wanted to meet up. Since I hadn't seen her since my last semester of college, I sensed something wasn't right. After that, neither she nor I had ever volunteered to meet. I promised to get back to her and let her know when I had some spare time. I had no intention of ever getting back to her. She went on to say that I had to notify her right away since it was essential. I excused myself and hung up the phone since I knew she was asking for something. She phoned me again 2 days later and said she needed my assistance since she was in a bit of a mess. She stated she had heard I had purchased a home and wanted me to allow her and Dan to move in before I could even consent. In essence, they wanted to live with me in my home. Her arrogance made me chuckle uncontrollably. I expressed to her my surprise that Dan was still alive and my wish that she had moved on from him. I informed her that, contrary to her assumption, I did not own a house. Rather, it was an apartment with a balcony, and the 3 of us could not possibly fit there. I hoped the size and space argument would be sufficient to dissuade her because I didn't want to explicitly tell her that I didn't want her there. I had been too optimistic though. She then informed me that I could leave the flat as it was only 1 bedroom, allowing her and Dan to move in together. I informed her that was not possible because I had put in a lot of effort to have someone else reside in my home. I also needed to pay off my mortgage. She lost it when I told her that I would rent her the going rate. She began yelling at me, claiming that she hadn't brought up her daughters to be such leeches, and that she couldn't believe I was renting from my own mother. She could go somewhere else to beg for crumbs, I told her, and I didn't have time for her or her yelling. I blocked her after hanging up. Jasmine told me she hadn't received a comparable call from Mom when I contacted her. A month has passed since their last conversation, during which Mom inquired about her residence. Jasmine informed her that she and her partner had moved in together and were saving money for a home. Why Mom needed a place to stay in the first place was beyond me. Dan had moved in with us in our dad's old house, where we grew up, and she still owned it. I didn't understand why she felt the need to relocate so quickly. To inquire about the residence, I gave my paternal grandparents a call. I finally realized what was actually happening at that point. My grandfather's name was on the house where we were raised. When my grandparents died, it was technically meant to go to Dad. It was agreed that my father and his brother, our Uncle Liam, would each receive a house that belonged to my grandfather, allowing them to live there without paying rent. This was intended to provide them with a solid foundation in life and enable them to make real estate investments for their kids. Therefore, the deed to the house we grew up in was legally in my grandfather's name rather than my father's. My grandma insisted that Grandpa keep the house in his name after Dad passed away so that Jasmine and I could inherit it as adults. But Grandpa didn't want to cause Mom any more problems because she was unemployed. I believe he also felt sorry for her, which is why he gave my mother ownership of the house when she requested him to. This was done with the idea that the house would be delivered to us when Jasmine was 27 and I turned 25. I now think this is the reason Mom warned us not to bring up the fact that she had married Dan. But soon, word spread. Grandpa claims that when they learned that she had remarried, they were angry because she had concealed it from them. At that point, they sought to transfer the house's ownership as quickly as possible. They insisted on finishing the papers to ensure that Dan and Mom couldn't do anything with the house because Jasmine was an adult and I was almost one. However, Mom cleverly informed them that Dan had moved on to someone else a few weeks after they had made their plans known. Her uncontrollable tears naturally caused my grandparents to give up on pursuing the ownership issue. They eventually forgot about it, and it became less important. Since then, they had only sometimes communicated with her, and that was the last time they discussed the house with her. I informed Grandpa that Mom had called to express her desire to move in with Dan at my place. What had happened to Dad's house, if such were the case? Since he was unaware that she had reconciled with Dan or that she was relocating, he indicated he would make an effort to learn more. This makes me uneasy, and I have a hunch that more drama will soon break out. Edit. To all of the commenters, I'm shocked that I was unaware of such significant information about my mother's life. This is what happens when you don't communicate with her. I don't regret my decision to shut her out of my life. I left the house and her life as soon as I reached 18, and ever since, I've been quite formal with her. I was unaware that Dan had left her and that he would return because of this. Jasmine and I were children, which is why we were unaware of the mansion. Both our grandparents and our mother were supposed to keep us safe. For this reason, the subject of real estate or home ownership was never discussed. We were minors at the time, and Grandpa and Grandma were dealing with our mother, who was meant to look after us, not defraud us, so they never considered talking to us about it. Jasmine and I are currently unaware of what transpired with Dad's house, but we plan to ask Mom and, if necessary, plan an intervention. I'll keep you all informed. Update 1. It's not good. Jasmine, her boyfriend, my grandparents and I made the decision to meet with Mom 2 weeks after my initial post in an attempt to find out what was going on. She was taken aback when we arrived because we had not informed her of our arrival. The finest aspect. A young couple opened the door when we arrived at our house, which was Dad's house and the place we grew up in. They claimed to be the property's owners, but at first we assumed they were Dan's family or perhaps Mom's acquaintances. They were telling the truth, but I didn't trust them, so I wanted to laugh. Without telling Jasmine or me or obtaining my grandparents' approval, Mom had sold the house. It's also interesting to note that the sale took place more than 6 months ago. There is nothing we can do now because she secretly sold our house 6 months ago. Regretfully, she was the legitimate owner of the house and had the right to sell it because my grandparents never finished the paperwork and ownership transfer. Everyone is shocked by this, and we all feel deceived and repulsed. We made an effort to locate her residence. It was in a 1-bedroom apartment in a seedy part of downtown, surrounded by junkies. I wasn't shocked to see that this was Dan's apartment because he seemed to be a junkie himself. Mom went white as a ghost when she saw us all standing together. We refused to let her shut the door as she attempted to do so. Fortunately, Jasmine's boyfriend, who is 6'4" and somewhat scary, was with us. Dan was sitting on the couch, smoking a cigarette and wearing a disoriented expression as we pushed our way inside. Mom gave us a tense greeting, but we immediately attacked. I informed her that Mom had sold Dad's house without telling Jasmine, me, or our grandparents, and that I knew it was meant for us. She started crying and claimed that Dan wouldn't have returned if she hadn't done it. She basically broke down in tears as she related how Dan had abandoned her twice for 2 separate women. Grandpa had truly departed when Mom told him Dan had left during their talk about the house. For him to return, she had to beg and plead. After being evicted from his new girlfriend's home, he eventually came back. Then, a year later, Mom discovered that he was having an affair with a girl who was just barely out of her teens. I simply stared at her as if she were crazy. When he was so troublesome and not supporting her in any manner, I questioned why she hadn't left him. I didn't have the patience to feel sorry for her, and she didn't respond to that. My grandmother was enraged. She yelled at her mother, telling her that she didn't want to hear justifications for her extreme failure. The house Jasmine and I were meant to live in was all that mattered to her. According to Mom, Dan wanted to purchase a yacht, so she sold the house. I don't know much about boats, but I do know that this man decided he wanted a boat after working as a coast guard at a beach a few miles away for a few months. If Mom didn't assist him in purchasing one, he threatened to abandon her once more. Thus, my mother, the world's greatest genius, sold her home and spent a portion of the proceeds to purchase a boat for this fool. She handed him the remaining funds rather than keeping them for herself. He used every last cent of it. He had to sell the yacht and purchase the apartment they were residing in when they had nothing left. And you know what? They detested it. Mom wanted to ask if I could allow her and Dan to remain with me because of this. When her story was over, she conceded defeatingly that she was certain I would no longer allow her to remain with me. Jasmine attacked her before I could respond, and wow, she was vicious. She enumerated the ways in which Mom had failed Dad as a wife and us as a mother. In order to support her uncaring husband, she had taken away the one thing that would have allowed us to remain connected to our father. She informed Mom that she would never hear from her again and that she was dead to her. I agreed with Jasmine, but I was still in shock and couldn't say much. I didn't want to do anything with my mom. Mom broke down in tears and said that she didn't deserve to be treated this way. We informed her that she did. Most significantly, she had deprived us of a link to our father and our early years. She had also stolen from our grandparents. We had no intention of ever forgiving her. We went out. She has since attempted to contact our grandparents and us, but none of us are able to get through to her. The money and property are permanently gone, and there is nothing we can do about the house. Although I realize it's a pipe dream and not really realistic. I'm thinking about accumulating money and purchasing it if it ever goes up for sale again, since I don't want to lose that aspect of my youth. My grandparents are devastated and incensed, but they are unable to help. We keep telling Grandpa that he couldn't have known she would do this, but he still curses himself for putting his trust in her. It's just a depressing situation, and we all feel powerless. Update 2. Dan departed from Mom once more. It may sound harsh, but I adore every aspect of it. Jasmine and I have not replied to her apparent attempts to contact us using new numbers and other means. She made an effort to include Aunt Janice. Last week, she called and asked me to speak with Mom. I told her everything and told her not to get involved. She was appalled as she was unaware that we were to inherit the house. She blocked her after apologizing for attempting to support Mom. The only information I received from Mom came from Auntie Janice, who informed me that Dan had abandoned her. Mom has nowhere to go and is now homeless. At first, Auntie Janice and her husband were open to taking her home, but they firmly objected after learning what Mom had done to us. Mom sent me an email yesterday. She essentially stated that she had nowhere to go, was homeless, and was down and out. She requested permission to live with me while she sought employment. She won't seek work, and if I take her in, she won't ever leave, so I know it's a lie. I feel awful about letting her live on the streets, but I also don't want her here, which is why I haven't replied yet. There just isn't anyone who would be willing to assist her. Even though I know she is solely to blame and that she caused this, I still feel bad for her. I know she will wreck my life if I give in, so I'm hoping I don't. Update 3. Jasmine said she received something similar after I told her about Mom's email. She acknowledged that she was secretly tempted to assist her but had not replied either. Since we both know Mom's personality, Jasmine informed me she would back my choice but that I give it careful thought. She will take over and ruin any tranquility I may have if I allow her inside. Thankfully, after a lengthy conversation, Jasmine made sense to me. In the end, I answered Mom. I sent her a lengthy email informing her that I would never, ever assist her. I vented all of my feelings, including disdain, hatred, wrath, and betrayal. I don't know if she has replied because I flagged her email as spam. I sent her the contact information for a few women's shelters that might be able to assist her, but that's all I'll do. She no longer deserves our assistance because she has been financially and emotionally irresponsible throughout our lives. I have requested Auntie Janice to keep me out of her affairs because I have no idea what she will do. I don't require her life updates. She was the worst part of my childhood and is no longer my mother. I'm prepared to let her go. Religious girlfriend confesses to getting drunk and having fun with 4 men at party, but the truth was far darker. I've been seeing my girlfriend, who we'll name Katie, for 4 years. We met while we were in college. Her parents were strict when she was in high school, so I'm the first person she's ever dated. Because of their religious beliefs, her parents oppose having sex before marriage. We've been waiting since Katie and her parents are really close, even though I don't really care about it. I had intended to pop the question within the next 6 months now that she had graduated. I had chosen a ring and everything. This girl had me completely smitten. But last night, or more precisely last weekend, that all changed. Since high school, Katie has had a male closest friend, whom her parents disapproved of due to his sexual orientation. Let us refer to him as Liam. Being in the same college as him meant they could spend as much time together as they wanted, which made her very happy. Although I've never been a huge fan of the male best friend dynamic, I was willing to overlook it because he was allegedly gay. However, he came out as bisexual 2 years ago. I requested Katie to stop spending time with him alone because I never felt comfortable in his presence. She said that, like her parents, I tried to control her and didn't support him. I informed her that I would not be staying for it, but that it was up to her if she wanted to continue seeing him alone. Although it was the largest issue we had ever faced together, we managed to resolve it. As a compromise, we agreed that Liam and his partner could spend time with me and Katie together, but never by themselves. I only wanted to establish a fair limit. I never intended to cut her off from her pals. But until Liam transferred to another institution during the summer, the four of us only met up twice. Katie continued to communicate with him via Discord, maintained friendships with him and his ex-boyfriend, and even joined them and a few other pals to create a gaming server. Despite the fact that the majority of these buddies were guys, she reassured me that nothing amusing was happening and that the majority of them even had girlfriends. Liam invited her to his birthday celebration last weekend. To make sure I was comfortable with her leaving, Katie wanted to discuss it with me first. Even though it was only a 2-hour drive away, she claimed she hadn't seen him in 2 years. There would be a number of her Discord server pals, including women, who she had never met in person before, as well as Liam's girlfriend. Unfortunately, I couldn't accompany her because I had a weekend excursion scheduled that would take me out on Friday and return on Sunday. However, I assured Katie that I trusted her and that I didn't mind if she went to see her friends. The issue began on Saturday evening. She sent me a text message in the morning while she was heading to the party, another text when she arrived, and a few more messages to check in during the day. Around 9 or 10 p.m., Katie informed me she intended to drive back. However, the messages ceased at that moment. I didn't bother her because I thought she was just enjoying herself and didn't want to come across as domineering. She eventually arrived at approximately 2 in the morning, and I stayed up to keep an eye on her whereabouts to make sure she got home safely. Although it was out of the ordinary, I trusted her and didn't want to assume anything. I assumed she would explain that she simply got caught up in having fun with her pals when I called her in the morning. She didn't pick up the phone when I called her on Sunday morning. A few minutes later, she wrote back to say she wasn't feeling well, had been sleeping, and had a hangover. Given that Katie doesn't drink, this was odd. I wished her well, advised her to drink a lot of water, and boarded my trip home. She was cuddled up in my bed, in the dark, when I got to my flat. She has my apartment's key, but she rarely uses it because I'm typically there to open the door with her. She remained silent when I questioned her about why she hadn't stayed at her flat to relax. She has hardly left my room since and has been complaining about not feeling well for the entire week. I've been visiting home during my lunch breaks to check on her since she took time off from work. In the back of my mind, I was dubious of what had transpired at the party over the weekend, but I was also frightened for her. Katie sobbed as she woke me up from the couch late last night. Other than using the restroom, it was the first time Mom had left my room since I returned home. I asked her what was wrong after comforting her until she was able to speak clearly. She told me that she had committed a terrible act. Liam offered to bring her home after she admitted to being incredibly intoxicated, by accident on Saturday night. After leaving Liam off, 3 of her buddies from the Discord gaming server hopped in a second car to follow them and drive her home. They assisted Katie in climbing the stairs and entering her flat once they arrived. Then she had intercourse with them all, she claimed. Each of the 4 men. According to Katie, she was completely out of it and doesn't recall the majority of it. Because she loves me so much and didn't want to upset me, she said she's been unwell ever since and has been trying to figure out how to tell me. She threw away her virginity, which she was ostensibly saving for marriage, to 4 other guys rather than the man who had taken care of her for the previous 4 years, even though she didn't mean to upset me. I found her at my apartment because she said she intended to inform me as soon as I returned, but she couldn't bring herself to do so since she didn't want to lose me. She pleaded with me not to end our relationship. I informed her that I needed some alone time to reflect. After that, she pleaded with me not to force her to return to her apartment. I told her she may return to my room as I didn't want to quarrel. Throughout the night, I could hear her sobbing sporadically. Admittedly, I was moved to tears myself. It's unbelievable that she would ruin our 4 years of relationship over a single party. I was about to pop the question. My faith in her has been betrayed. I haven't been able to concentrate all day at work. If she's still there, a part of me wants to tell her to leave as soon as I get home and that I don't want to see her ever again. A part of me wants to speak with her more and try to repair what we have left. I am unable to determine which perspective is more rational. How can I get around this? Update. This is triggering alerts everywhere. I apologize to everyone who missed my last post. I'm finally getting around to writing this because my girlfriend went to bed early and I have nothing else to do. To start, if you don't care, you can go straight to the update. I believe my previous post was removed due to accusations of being fraudulent. I wasn't spending time in the comments refuting every charge, which is one of the main reasons why many appear to believe it was a fake. Since I left work to see how Katie was doing, I hadn't even opened Reddit. At the time, it wasn't even close to my top priority. One moment he says he has her location and the next he's surprised she's at his apartment? Is a simple and quick way to refute this. Just to make sure she made it home safely, I looked up her whereabouts on Saturday night. Since I am not a stalker who follows her everywhere, I did not look up her location after that. I wouldn't have known her precise location unless I had checked our texts between my trip and my arrival home because the iPhone displays your location in the text messages you exchange with that person. Furthermore, not everyone owns an iPhone. My girlfriend and I use an app since I do but she doesn't. I don't need to be a stalker, therefore no, I don't receive notifications from the app. Random excessive details, I apologize. I wanted to let everything out since, as I previously stated, I had been holding my breath since she informed me what had transpired that evening. I had all of those information about the situation circling around in my mind. The core content is flawless, but the update is riddled with typos. Only the TLDR update was written by the OP. After learning that my partner may have been raped, I apologize for being a little disorganized and rushed. By the way, I've gone back and corrected the mistakes. After I shut down Reddit, I had no clue that my article would receive hundreds of more comments, each of them critically examining every word I said in the letter. There isn't any worry at all that she's become pregnant? No concerns regarding STIs? Not then. No, I wasn't even certain that I would remain with her. If I had stayed, I would have been worried about becoming pregnant and getting STIs, but at the time of writing, I thought she had cheated on me and was considering ending our relationship. No worries that she was potentially drugged and raped. Not at the time of writing, once more. She had told me that she had intercourse with 4 men, and I was still in shock. I would have thought she would have mentioned getting raped or drugged, but she didn't. I hadn't even considered the possibility that she might be in denial herself until I read all the responses. Does this devout girl who desired to postpone marriage now want to be train run on her? Fake, of course. No, it turns out that she didn't want anything to do with what transpired. Look at the remainder of the subreddit if you're among those who said, someone in my position wouldn't have taken the time to write everything out for a post. There wouldn't be any posts here at all if people in difficult situations didn't share their experiences. You may personally expletive off everyone who implied that it was a hoax or that she must have been a cow for 4 men to carry her up the stairs. Even though I wish what I wrote wasn't true, everything above was a bunch of pretentious bullshit. For the record, I just included all of that in order to prevent harassment on this thread. If none of that applies to you, you can go straight to this section. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who assisted with this, as reading over all of the comments let me realize what actually occurred. Just before lunch, I left work and went straight home to see how my girlfriend was doing. She was lying in bed, sobbing, just as I had left her. After getting her permission, my initial action was to simply go hold her. I shared her tears. I eventually broached the subject of what had transpired that evening. Was any of that really what she wanted to happen? Despite the fact that a lot was said, she did not, as many of you urged. To be clear, the friends she was with at the party were also intimate friends of Liam, her best buddy of 8 years, and not just strangers she met online. They were folks she had spoken to and played games with over the past year, but she had never met them in person. Over her headset, I would frequently hear her conversing with them, and I never noticed anything odd. I was glad she had people to play with as she gamed because she's somewhat shy and introverted. She also claimed that there were 4 or 5 ladies working in the server, so they weren't all men. 3 of the guys and 2 of the ladies were present at the gathering. Liam's girlfriend, a few of other pals, and several of their partners were also there. There were only around 15 people in total, and most of them knew one another. A little get-together of Liam's closest pals at his residence was all that was intended to happen. It wasn't even intended for alcohol to play a significant role. Since they hadn't been able to come together in person for a while, the most of them were just enjoying themselves at the start of the party. Since many of the attendees were LGBTQ+, there was little distinction between the sexes. To engage in general mingling and socializing, some people divided into small groups to talk. One of the visitors gave everyone mystery shots about the halfway point of the celebration. Liam persuaded Katie to take it for his birthday, even though she first objected. Everyone urged her to try the shot after learning that she had never had one before. Liam emphasized that it was just one shot, and that it would wear off before she had to drive home. If not, he offered, she may wait as long as it took for her to feel safe behind the wheel. She finally took the shot because she felt pressed. Things became a little less obvious after that. More people were drinking and hanging out. She is unsure of the specific individuals who continued to give her alcohol, claiming she didn't want to spoil Liam's celebration. If nothing else, she was confident Liam would protect her. Katie claimed that even though she didn't feel well, she trusted him to let her know if something wasn't right and that he kept telling her that everything was okay. She recalls being quite ill, witnessing other people faint on the couch, and hearing Liam express his desire to drive her home himself in order to check on her. He expressed regret for allowing her to become so damaged and apologized. She recalls 2 other Discord males getting into his car after one of her friends promised Liam he would follow them in his car and bring Liam back later. She remembers Liam helping her get sober in the car by offering her a bottle of water. She recalls them laughing as they carried her upstairs to her apartment and brought her inside. I won't go into any more detail than that. She didn't want anything that occurred to happen. Was she gullible? Perhaps. Did she likely overlook some warning signs and make some poor decisions? Yes. However, Katie wasn't worthy of that. The men who committed this are to blame. I'm not giving her a deadline, and she doesn't want to disclose anything to the police. I completely support her decision, and I've read a lot about how horrible that process can be. Of course, I'll support her through that as well if she ever decides she does want to submit a report. We're going to visit a physician. Katie claims that she has been in a lot of discomfort, which is one of the reasons she spent the majority of this time curled up in bed. After some persuasion and assurance, she consented even though she really doesn't want to be prodded down there. In addition to seeing her on Monday, we'll also get tested for STI and pregnancy, 2 things we're equally concerned about. We've spoken a lot over the weekend. Both of us have shed many tears. Hugs and consoling one another when necessary have been shared in abundance. At least she gets some sunlight in the bedroom now that I've opened the curtains. I'm not forcing her to return to her apartment, for those who were worried. And to those who suggested it, no, I won't be ratting her out to her parents, nor would I abandon her now or after she recovers in order to find someone who isn't damaged. In order to care for her, attend as many doctor's visits as necessary, schedule therapy and other activities, I will be taking the entire next week off. Although I doubt I will ever be able to make up for the time I spent apart from her this past week, I promise to support her through whatever comes next. Once more, I want to express my gratitude to everyone who left a comment on my initial post and made me understand what a self-centered idiot I was. I hope that everyone who was worried would find this update helpful. Though I hope we can get there, Katie isn't feeling well at the moment. Comments where OP has replied. Commenter, Op, you do what you think is best, but I want to add something to make sure she considers it because these pieces of Yirnavran do this to all women, not just herself, as much as I would like to say. Katie won't be the last, she wasn't the first. These rapes are mama board men sabam. She is prepared to allow this to occur repeatedly if she is unwilling to act morally and report the violence. You should also speak with Liam, her friend, and find out why he abandoned her to be raped. This is what he did. He let it occur. He has to deal with this, and he can either support her or oppose her. She must inform her parents. You are sticking with a cheater, therefore please stop updating if she is unwilling to do this, OP. OP. I will not issue an ultimatum to her. She doesn't report, so I won't label her a cheater. Following the re-traumatization that comes with reporting and everything that follows, rape victims have taken their own lives. I gave it a thorough investigation. Have you, or are you assuming, without having first-hand experience, what occurs in our legal system? Warning. All 4 of them would probably walk even if she did report. Nor am I forcing her to tell her overly devout parents so they can try to embarrass her. Man, she is not responsible for this. The men who committed this are the ones who must be prepared to act morally and put an end to child rape. Caught my wife smiling as her lover grabbed her ass. I filed for divorce, and now she's begging for forgiveness. My spouse, 30F and I 32M, recently got back from an extended camping trip with 2 other couples who have been friends for years. We had a terrific visit, but I still can't get over what happened the morning we departed. As we prepared to return home, we were all packed. I noticed my wife and my friend when I looked up from loading our car. They were a few feet distant from the campsite. I watched as he reached out and squeezed her hip while slipping his hand down her ass while she was stooping to pick something up. My wife pushed his hand away swiftly, but she didn't seem furious. Instead, she was grinning at him in a way that was almost amusing. I felt as though I had been punched in the stomach, but it all happened so quickly, maybe a second or 2. I looked about, but it didn't appear to be observed by anyone else. The second couple was farther away, talking about the travel back, while his wife was busy packing up their car. It was a calm drive home. My wife attempted to strike up a discussion, but I was unable to concentrate since I kept thinking about that event. I pretended that I was just thinking about work when she questioned why I was so silent. To tell the truth, I was stunned. I was reluctant to mention it. She could try to convince me that I was being crazy or that I was just having hallucinations if I brought it up. I had the impression that I was going through the rest of the day automatically. I can scarcely concentrate at work today because I didn't get much sleep last night. Every aspect is being questioned by my rushing thoughts. Everything seemed in order, and aside from what I witnessed, the remainder of the vacation was fantastic. I'm unsure if I understood the scenario correctly. However, the smile on her face seemed too casual and welcoming for something that went too far. I adore my wife dearly. Since our first year of college together, I have never had any cause to question her. Even though she is my best friend, I'm having trouble untangling a knot in my stomach for the first time. I've always had great faith in her and have never been the kind to pry. However, as I sit here, I'm debating whether or not to check her phone. Even if I wanted to, I'm not sure how I could accomplish it without her figuring it out because it's password protected. I know I have to take action because this is getting to me. Is it foolish of me to look through her phone? And how could I if it's password secured, even if I wanted to? Update 1, I located her iPad. Since there was no password, I was able to log in, and her phone is still linked to it. She's using Telegram. There, they have been conversing. She is cheating, but I'm still reading through the messages. I'm attempting to maintain my composure so that I can make the right decision going forward without ruining this. How should I proceed? When she gets home, should I confront her? Should I confront him at his home? Please assist. Update 2. I appreciate all of your advice. I kept it a secret from her. I've sequestered myself in my home office, claiming that I have work to catch up on. She is not a suspect. The iPad stayed with me. She won't even realize it's gone because she hasn't used it in a long time. As an additional precaution, I used my phone to take screenshots of every message they sent. As far as I can tell, they have been communicating for at least 8 months. Their primary means of contact is Telegram. After splitting from me and his wife, they appear to have exchanged explicit communications and even planned to formally announce their relationship. It's unbelievable that she would harm me in this way. She even texted him a suggestive picture of herself earlier this evening while she was heading to the gym, based on the communications I read. She wanted to be intimate and began kissing me as soon as she got home. I declined, stating that I had some work to do. I'll take the advice I've been given here and get some evidence because I'm confused and unable to think clearly right now. I'll go to work on those actions. Additionally, I've noticed a number of comments suggesting that I keep my money apart from hers. We have joint bank accounts and co-own the apartment where we reside. She is aware that I had a sizable legacy from my parents, who passed away in a car accident 2 years ago. Even if she doesn't have access to that money, is there anything I can do to safeguard it in case something goes wrong? Fortunately, we are not yet parents. Update 3. Since I occasionally work from home and had no meetings this morning, I used the time to look up and call attorneys. Although most couldn't schedule me until next week, I have 2 consultations scheduled for tomorrow. As soon as I get a lawyer and get myself covered legally, I will tell his wife and present her the evidence. Before I determine what to do next, like addressing my wife, I'll allow her time to organize her affairs and, if she so desires, hire a lawyer. I have no idea why I'm feeling this way. For some reason, I'm more numb than outraged. The messages, particularly the explicit ones, make me feel ill and queasy. I feel like I'm living someone else's life, even though I'm only doing what I have to do at the moment. I'm not sure how long I can maintain this poker look before she realizes something's wrong. I appreciate all of your support and messages. Update 4, I appreciate all of the advice you have given me. I have been keeping myself occupied with work and going to the gym, so not much has happened since yesterday. My wife is aware that the anniversary of my parents' deaths is approaching in approximately 1 month. I simply said that I was thinking about them when she questioned why I appeared aloof. A handful of my scheduled lawyer consultations are today, but the majority are scheduled for next week. After I choose a lawyer and am aware of my options, I will provide another update. Final update. My divorce papers were filed this morning after I found a great lawyer who was able to draft them in a matter of days. Since I reside in a no-fault jurisdiction, none of the adultery evidence I collected will be utilized in court. The good news is that since I didn't spend my fortune on married expenditures, it's safe. One of us will have to buy the other out, or we will both have to sell our condo, which was a wedding present with equal down payments from both sets of parents. I gave my ex-friend's wife a ring on Saturday and invited her over for coffee. Ironically, her husband and my wife had taken an overnight excursion together, which is why I picked this day. Through their texts on the iPad, I learned that my wife had informed me that she would be spending the weekend at her sister's house to assist with the children while her sister's husband was away on business. Meanwhile, her spouse said he was gone on a project for work. In actuality, my wife's spouse was paying for their hotel stay while they were traveling out of town together. I showed his wife the telegram pictures and messages. She informed me that a few months prior, she had observed that he was being aloof, but she had never believed that he was cheating and had dismissed it as work-related stress. She was devastated to learn that her husband was having an affair with my wife, who is also her friend. I provided her my lawyer's contact information in case she wanted it throughout our lengthy conversation. She's thinking about her choices. Sunday evening. After visiting her sister's house, my wife came home. Just after spending the weekend with her lover, she came in the door, kissed me and said she missed me. She has nearly demonic compartmentalization skills. We needed to chat, so I sat her down. We live in a one-party consent state, so I did as my lawyer advised and taped the entire conversation. It proceeded like this. I begged her to swear to tell the truth to me. Despite her apparent nervousness, she answered, "Of course, baby." I then posed a number of queries, including, "Do you love me?" "Yes." "Are you satisfied with me?" "Yes, darling, of course." "Have I treated you well as a husband? Do I treat you fairly?" "Yes and yes." "So why are you betraying me?" After a whole minute of staring at me in disbelief, she started to dispute it. After some time passed, I advised her to stop acting as I already knew the truth. On a night out with her partner a few months back, she finally broke down and confessed to kissing a man who had been making advances on her at a pub. I'm not sure why, but the whole thing was so ridiculous that I started giggling at this point. She had cheated on him more than once. She had done it whenever she could. I questioned her about whether or not she had cheated before. She vowed fervently that it was the only occasion, that it was a sign of weakness, that she was intoxicated, and that it had no significance. I told her I had filed for divorce, but I remained silent and gave her my lawyer's business card. I wanted to speak with her once to see whether there was anything worth preserving about our marriage, so I hadn't filed yet. I instructed her to call my lawyer if she wanted to get in touch with me. After crying, pleading, and apologizing, she started gaslighting me by claiming that I was discarding everything we owned because of a single error as I was packing a suitcase. Her statement that "you have no one else in the world" was the worst. Why would you abandon your lone surviving family? I informed her that she was the only family member I had left after my parents passed away and that I could rely on no one else, thus it hurt that she responded negatively. That evening, I departed for a motel, where I will remain until I locate a new flat. I formally filed for divorce yesterday. Edit. I kept my knowledge of my ex-friend's affair from her. I said nothing about the other affair when she confessed to kissing a stranger at the pub. After confronting him, my ex-friend's wife called my wife and yelled at her. I don't blame his wife for being upset when I spoke with her. She had been traveling out of town to visit her ailing mother, but her husband took advantage of the opportunity to spend time with my wife rather than providing for her. I was caught off guard when my wife confessed to kissing a stranger, so I kept the affair a secret. It might not seem like much in comparison to the double life she was living with my friend, but it was shocking to me at the time when I discovered how much she wanted to cheat on me. I simply went since I was too furious to speak to her without losing my temper. Leaving made more sense than trying to figure out why she had been having an affair with my former friend. She continued to call and leave messages that night after I left the house. My ex-friend's wife ceased attempting to contact me after she phoned her the following day and addressed her husband as well. Both she and he have been completely silent ever since. I connected the dots because I stopped getting calls from my ex-friend's wife completely around the time she messaged me to tell me she had confronted him and phoned my wife.